Hello, everyone. For this discussion, Roger and I were trying something a little different with our camera equipment in the hopes of bringing you a better product. That turned out to be a horrible, horrible failure. The footage was in fact so bad that to release it would be a disservice to both the veteran and to you, the audience. So, instead of that footage, we have gotten together many more pictures than we normally do, and we'll be using those instead. Remember, here at Tracer Burnout, we are not a slick corporate product. There are no teams of people backing us up. It's just Roger and myself and our guest. If that changes the way that you feel about this particular episode, then by all means, go over to your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or iHeart or Apple Podcasts or whichever, and you can listen to the only audio version there. Thanks for bearing with us as we learn along the way. Hi, I'm Dan.
I'm Roger.
Welcome back to Tracer Burnout. As you can see, we are back in the studio for the first time since April.
Yep.
We are finally co-located, which means we will be able to increase the output. So we're going to move from releasing episodes every 3 weeks to every 2 weeks. And...
Yep, another big announcement. We are finally on all the podcast platforms. So we'll be on all the major ones and most of the minor ones.
Yep.
And we will, as always, continue to be on YouTube and Rumble. So if you like to watch the content with all the additional pictures and everything that comes with that, we'll remain on those two platforms. But our reach is getting wider, so we appreciate everybody for that, all the support. Also, friend of the show, Miss Rhonda provided us this really great airborne print.
Yep.
So we're going to get that framed and added to the studio here very soon. And in addition to that, episode 2, Mr. Bill Vernacki's, one of our first episodes that we recorded, gifted us these really great Vietnam veteran coffee mugs, which we are proud to display here in the studio. So pretty excited about that too.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bill and Rhonda. Now, we also have a couple of partnerships to announce.
Sure.
So, first, an army marches on its stomach, right? Well, that's partially true. An army stays motivated through coffee.
It does
so,
indeed.
Aerial Resupply Coffee, veteran-owned business. Mike over there is great. No gimmicks, no nonsense. It's just good coffee.
Great veteran-owned business.
I prefer the darker roast stuff like Spectre. Firewatch is good.
Firewatch is my favorite.
Yep. So if you want to check them out, pick up something, you can go over to aerialresupplycoffee.com and use our promo code TracerBurnout for 10% off.
Yep.
Or you can go to our website, tracerburnout.com, and there will be the affiliate link there.
Yeah, perfect. Other partner, our friend Mitch over at Heroes Harvest. It's a nonprofit, as we said. They provide exclusive hunting and fishing excursions for Gold Star families, veterans, sometimes for active duty service members. But they're trying to provide a therapeutic environment for these folks, so think kind of along the lines of mental health. They also have some pretty great programs for transitioning service members who could be retiring or leaving the service one way or the other. If they're interested in a career in the outdoor industry, they have some programs that kind of help them with that too. So,
you think we should do that?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I know that you would love the fishing, but
if somebody paid me to fish, that would be fantastic.
Would you sign up for a bear hunt with me?
Only if it was bow hunting.
I was thinking Bowie knife.
Yikes.
All right. Now, before we get started with our next interview, just a reminder. We're just veterans talking to veterans about their service here. We are not licensed mental health professionals. We are not experts on the VA or retirement or benefits at all. Not in any way, shape, or form. There are some great people out there doing great stuff that you can use as resources there, but that's not us. So, bear that in mind.
I mean, are we experts in anything?
Not so much.
Okay, yeah. So, without further ado, we'd like to present to our first Marine Corps veteran guest, Mr. Mike M2 McCusker. Stay tuned.
Enjoy. Mike, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks for being on the show.
Nice to come back to Fayetteville.
A sentence rarely said amongst veterans.
But great history.
Yeah, I mean, I love it here. I love this town. I don't care what anybody says.
That's right. You got to be from somewhere, right? And it'll always be brag. I know.
Yeah, but All right, so what we like to do to get started is a little bit of background history. So, do you have a family history of service?
I do. It's interesting. My father was a New Guinea campaign, Philippine campaign in World War II. He was what was called the Engineer Special Brigades out of New England, Camp Edwards, Cape Cod Commandos, they called them. My grandfather was a squid, Navy guy, and he was a fast frigate guy. I lose some time in betweens, and then my initial family that came over from Ireland were part of the 11th Massachusetts Light Field Artillery. A good Irishman conscripted into the big army,
which was common back then.
That's it. Yes. So they stayed and weren't conscripted into anything else.
You're talking Union Army.
Union. Yes.
Yeah. They literally had boots and rifles and uniforms right there on the docks, waiting for the immigrants to come in, and then like, do you want to be a citizen?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Here's your stuff.
That's it.
Yeah, there's a great in the movie Gettysburg.
Yep.
The gentleman who's a NCO, who's an advisor to the battalion commander there, is an Irishman, and he's one of the most important characters. He was a real person, of course, but in that, so yeah.
And then my family goes all the way back to Ireland, and then Vikings, Oscar the Red, and that's related to Leif Erikson. So interesting background.
Oscar,
yeah. McCusker, Oscar, McCusker. That's how it came.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oscar's not a name you hear of terribly often when you think of Vikings.
Yes.
But all right, cool.
So you're from the Northeast.
Boston, West Roxbury, the Bury, and grew up down the street from Catholic Memorial, and then went to Norwich University in Vermont for college. I ended up, in 1967, the house burnt down, and I ended up staying with the Irish Christian Brothers. If you're familiar with New England and some of the characters, you know Whitey Bulger.
Yes.
Well, the two people that Whitey Bulger verified that he was a nice person was Christian Allen, who was my next door neighbor. He played for Boston Bruins and the Montreal Canadiens, and a great hockey player, the whole 9 yards, and he was their enforcer on the ice, and he was a young kid, was the same way in the neighborhood. And then the other guy was Father Fred Ryan, and Father Fred Ryan married everyone in my family, to include me, and but then Father was defrocked from the caught up of the whole Irish Christian stuff, but I still believe to this day he never was. He was still a great person in my perspective. So
yeah.
So we lived in a white neighborhood. Down the street was Arthur Kelly, who helped capture the Boston Strangler, and across the street from him was the Nanes, and they had a huge motorcycle gang. But nobody messed around because you were in a whitey area, so it's good guys.
Yeah, I guess that's what we call a silver lining.
Yeah,
I suppose. I mean, I don't know if gangster enforced good behavior is a silver lining, but I suppose there's some ups and downs.
So you said you went to Norwich. Was that directly from high school?
Straight from high school, went to Norwich. I knew since like 8th grade, or when I was 8 years old, sorry, not 8th grade, I wanted to be a Marine or in the service. I watched Walter Cronkite on TV, and I watched this. They were panning a stud Marine in an ambush, and he's just standing there and taking rounds and saying, "Let's go, move out." And the cameraman's like, "We're taking fire," and he's just like, "Move up," And I said, "Okay." So went to Norwich. Told my father, I said, "Dad, I'm going to enlist." He said, "Your life expectancy in amphibious operations," since he drove Mike boats, he said, is 3 seconds as an infantry Marine. He said, I said, "Dad, no, I'm going to go to Norwich, become an officer." He says, "Well, that's great. You've increased your life expectancy 300%. It's now 3 minutes." So
don't mean to laugh, but
so did that in Norwich University. The Corps Cadets is a great place. Mm-hmm. It's the oldest private military college there is.
That's right.
Started ROTC, United States Citizen Soldier. And I attribute a lot of things I learned about leadership before I went to Paris on. So I went that summer between freshman and sophomore year to help me do very well. Graduate honor man and all that stuff, and that was because of Norwich. So It's a great place.
Were you doing we call it SMP now, a simultaneous membership program, which is when you go to boot camp or basic training during your ROTC experience, obviously during the summer, and then you're doing a guard hitch.
Yeah, it's for the Marine Corps. It's a little bit different because you go in. If there's a lot of kids who do this, they go in as a 180-day wonder, I think they call it, and go to Parris Island, and then you go back to your unit. You're in the reserves, going to college, and then you'll go to infantry school or whatever your next MOS is for the next summer, and then you'll continue to do that. So I came right out of Parris Island, graduated, went home, went right back to school, and my unit was 1st Battalion, 25th Marines, Delta Company out of Manchester, and then that unit made a satellite unit up in Norwich. So we started a platoon up there, and we had an MOI up there, and that's how we did all our training up in the hills of Vermont. And
nice.
All that. And my first deployment, ADT, I think we call it now, is came back to Camp Lejeune, and it was right during the Iranian hostage situation. So as we're going through the Manchester airport and getting on C-130s in uniform and rucks and all that, everyone's like, "Go get them! Go kick some butt," and blah 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 and all that stuff, and we're like, "Where are we going?" Because by that I'm a Lance Corporal type thing, and back then you didn't get the full commander's intent. You just get on the plane, we're going somewhere, and off you go type thing.
So that's 79.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's take it back to Parris Island. Talk to us about your experience there.
The yellow boots.
Yeah, get in it. It was funny because I had read. There's a book called Marine Machine. I had listened to everything I did. I had read about Chesty Puller. I knew all about the Marine Corps history and all that. Norwich, we had great kids at Norwich, students at Norwich who were great Marines. They'd gone to OCS and all that, Officer Candidate School and everything. And so I had a great background before I went. So I was excited to go and got on the bus. You cross the pathway and then get on Parris Island, and it's just like everyone says it is. It's just eerie. You get to do there at the middle of the morning, the early morning, and then all of a sudden the drill instructors come on, and it's on like Donkey Kong. And,
it's near ambush.
Never stops. It's constant go, go, go. And I remember the first day they took the biggest kid who was there, and a guy named Hercules, appropriately so, and he became the guide. But after about 2 days, because I knew drill, I knew how to do all that, I knew cadence, I knew everything, and they said, "Okay, you're out, you're in," and I was the guide, and went from there and all the way through. And then my drill instructor was the honorable senior drill instructor, Staff Sergeant McVeigh, and the Staff Sergeant Montgomery, and the Staff Sergeant Cotton, I think the other one was. And it was a great time. My boot camp buddy was Drew Frampson, a Jewish kid out of Newton, just a great kid, and his dad was a Tower Marine and a atomic bomb Marine, with the guys who took the radiation and all. And so Drew knew more about Marine Corps history and customs than I ever did, and numerous times he'd correct the drill instructor, and it was always fun to watch.
from afar, of course.
Yeah.
The drills did not appreciate his course corrections?
It was funny. They would make him do push-ups because we both had been the Corps Cadets. Push-ups were fun to us, and so it was always a great time. We just had fun in the whole thing. And the day I graduated from Parris Island, I was honor man, and the senior drill instructor, and your honor man award, blah blah blah, and from General Jizz to General Jizz, and all the way down the end you hear, "Just Dilka, sir, Frampson, push-ups," but it was great. It was all the things that you think about Parris Island, shooting, rifle range, all the stuff like that it was the epitome of the Marine Corps dream.
So what year is this? This is mid-70s.
That's 77. I enlisted, so that's summer of 77.
Yeah, so we're just trying to frame this into historical context. So I imagine most of your drills are going to be folks who had been in Vietnam. Yeah. All
the drill instructors were Vietnam guys. My company commander, platoon commander, was a younger guy, hadn't been. My battalion commander was Medal of Honor winner, Lieutenant Colonel Brownham. So he came in and he talked to us. The guy, Captain Gaskins, was the company commander, who I went on to become a 3-star general, and I've since seen him a lot. The Marine Corps is now out. He lives in the Jacksonville area. And it was, you still had some of this going on. You get smoke call, one cigarette, matches, whatever, and in the evening, and go out and you get inspected and thumped, go to smoke call. So, and I didn't smoke, but it was an opportunity to get outside. And, so that was, and it was all good.
So you did, while you were at Norwich, you did a lot of your own background research and everything in preparation for your time at Parris Island. So you were pretty well prepared. And not just that, but being in the ROTC program obviously helped you for
fitness.
Yeah, Norwich itself is a Corps Cadets, so it helped me that they had Army ROTC, Air Force ROTC. The Navy wasn't established yet at Norwich. So, matter of fact, the Marine Corps recruiter couldn't even come on campus. I had to get recruited off base. But we did everything. But
through their program, and then through your own research and your own deep diving, you were prepared for pretty much everything that they threw at you.
Yes.
What were you not prepared for?
Rest. The endurance, remember how I lost becoming the guide is I fell asleep making my rack in the rifle range, literally, because you had to get on the rack, pull it tight, make sure you could bounce a quarter off at the Hawaiian yards, and you're just going continuously. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't used to that. I mean, I was in great shape, but that just the endurance of being able to keep on going was probably the one thing I didn't plan for. So.
Yeah. Okay, I can get that. Was that an intentional, like the sleep deprivation? Do you think that was an intentional part of the program, or was it just not just through physical exhaustion through the exercise, but also maybe mental exhaustion from all the information being constantly thrown at you and whatnot?
Having gone back and become a series commander, in the whole program for Parris Island is very well scripted, and so they build into it a whole piece of physical training, mental training, mm-hmm. Moral leadership, the whole 9 yards, courage, honor, commitment, the whole focus of what it is to be a Marine. Back then, we always got taught about McEwen and the whole 9 yards, and the Marines getting killed in a rifle range, walking the swamps. So, but there were still things going on that weren't as totally professional as we look at it today. Back then, I still loved every bit of it, but it was just part of the program. You get up at 4 a.m. at the rifle range because you're on the range and you're ready to start shooting when the sun comes up. So that's probably the hardest time you're out there is banging targets. And the Marine Corps is we are the epitome of marksmen, every one of us, and so that is where you really get and learn. But that means you're out there constantly going shooting at the barrel, the whole 9 yards, which means you're doing dry shooting, and then you're on the range from 0:30 in the morning until sometime late in the afternoon, and then you PTing and the whole 9 yards. So it was intense in that aspect of it, but it was always great to shoot. I'm a big shooter guy, so I love it.
Okay.
So you go back to school to Norwich. Do you graduate?
Yeah. So I go back by then. Because they're a Corps cadet, so that summer go through Parris Island, come back. I'm now a corporal. I have a squad to lead, and these are young recruits, or rooks we call them at Norwich. And then I'm simultaneously taking my classes. I'm a phys ed major, so I'm going through all the pre-courses of physiology, kinesiology, biology, all that stuff, which I didn't realize were a few points short of becoming some level of a physician.
Sure.
Go all that. And then I have to write a thesis to get my degree. I have to write a paper, but they never clarified what the paper was supposed to be, or that it had to be about physical activity. So I write about amphibious operations in World War II. And the head doctor of the whole program is like, Mike, what is that, sir? You said to write a paper, so that's what I wrote about. And he said, okay. But I did great on my student teaching and taught elementary and then high school and all that stuff, and I really loved that. And taught classes in basketball and judo, did a lot of that stuff because I was doing judo at Norwich with a friend of mine, Paul Stitch Uticon, who was a Thai Ranger, and so I was his combatives instructor, and then we was teaching that at Norwich, we call the cadets, all that stuff. And my senior year, I was in charge of all of the recruit training. I was a cadet captain, and that goes all the way up to a cadet colonel who's the regimental commander and the deputy regimental commander. And did all that, got into a program, or what we call a secret society, which was Skull and Swords, and they were responsible for the honor of Norwich University. And if some kid got in trouble somewhere all over the East Coast, we'd drive there, talk to the local police, get the kid out of jail, and bring him back to school if it wasn't a grievous. If it was morally wrong, then he'd probably get expelled, but we try to take care of all the kids and make sure that they stayed out of trouble and, did do good things. So
How frequently did you have to make those trips?
Probably almost every weekend. So, yeah, we would travel up and down. I mean, one time I had to drive to Connecticut, and we had to take care of a kid. But the police and the local law enforcement knew us, and plus kids on campus. We'd help kids get home who couldn't get home because they didn't have the money. Mm-hmm. The school, we had a mentor, a guy named then Captain Hunt, who would only become Colonel Hunt, Special Forces guy, who was a Fox News commentator. General Friedovich, he was there after, like the year I left, and so they were our mentors, and we reported straight to the president at the school. And it was a great program. I'm sorry to say that about years later, we had some problems, and some of our brothers did or did not do some bad things, and they got disbanded in the process. But we are now a big organization who still provide scholarships and fun for kids at Norwich University, and they're my Skull and Swords brothers. So they're great people, and all of them are great businessmen or military leaders across the board. So great program. I graduate, and then get about a month or so off, and then head off to the basic school at Quantico, Virginia. We learned to become a young lieutenant. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, well, in between my junior year, I had to go to Officer Candidate School, and I did the 10-week program. So I come back, and now I'm Officer Candidate. In Norwich normally has about 5 to 7 Marine officers, kids who have gone to Officer Candidate School and get ready to become a young lieutenant. And we had great ones: Chris Mulholland, Steve Folio, Ed Dunlap. There were Jim Alvarez was when I was a freshman, and a guy named Wild Bill Callahan. And I ran into Bill later on, right after 9/11. He became the Chief of Staff for 2nd Marine Division. Tommy Dale, great. These are great leaders, even as young kids, college students, but they all had the Marine. They drank the Kool-Aid, and we all like crayons, so it's all good to go. So, graduate and then head off to Quantico and start the whole program there.
So you do we call it Bullock now, but it's lieutenant school.
Yeah, so at the basic school for the Marine Corps, all officers go there. Doesn't matter your MOS, you learn to become a Marine Corps officer. And you do all the, everything from land nav to etiquette to history to leadership and combat skills and all that. And then I get to stay again because then all infantry officers in the infantry officers course, which is probably the hardest officer qualification course there is, bar none, anywhere else. It's even compared to even harder than Ranger School. And it is kick-ass, get some, and you become a very, very competent military infantry officer for the Marine Corps, and you are a badass by the time.
So what year is this?
That's now 81.
81.
Yeah.
So you finished the basic course.
Yeah.
What's your first assignment?
2nd Battalion, 6th Marines.
Okay.
Right at Camp Lejeune. And then my first deployment, and there I'm a 1st Platoon Commander for Golf Company 26. And my company commander is Ken Coolman Curcio, who's a Force Recon guy, Mayaguez guy. So he helped when the North Koreans took the Mayaguez and went back to the purple, I think it was, went back into save those guys. My first sergeant Steve Slauson was a blue light guy. Is now the first sergeant, is squared away. He's a shooter, and we have nothing but senior staff NCOs who are senior guys who are Vietnam guys, and they're teaching us young studs how to be real Marines.
Very experienced leaderships.
Very experienced and hands-on. Just great people. And then, battalion commanders, guys like Wesley Fox, Medal of Honor winner, is 1-6. Colonel Don Anderson is my boss, 2-6. I forget who 3-6 was, but these are great people. Mike Lowe, who was one of the company commanders, great guy, goes on to become a full bird colonel. And Dewey Malden was out there. All these people who were just phenomenal leaders, and this is who I get to interact with as a young lieutenant.
Yeah, that's a lot of mentorship. NCOs and commanders alike.
Did you notice a difference in some way, shape, or form? Because you had been at Norwich, and then Parris Island, back to Norwich, then to the infantry, or to OCS.
OCS, yeah.
And then the infantry school. But now you're actually in your first real unit. Was there a big difference or a big shift in the way that you had to approach things, or something where you were like, wow, this is different than the last 5-6 years?
Interestingly, when I first came in, you got to remember we had a big drug problem in the Marine Corps.
Post Vietnam, everybody did.
Yeah. And we had a Sergeant Muro, a Sergeant Washington, who were kids who were really being hard guys and great, real squared away. But we had a lot of guys who it was constant drugs, race problems, the whole 9 yards. And you didn't expect that because no one really talked about that because you were all green. Everybody light green, dark green. We all bleed red in the process. But to bump into that right after the get-go, it's like, okay, I got to make sure we see how we work with that one. But what helped me was the fact that I had been enlisted before as I became a lieutenant. It gave you a little bit more kudos, and people said, "Yeah, he's been there." So
gave you a little bit more credit.
Yeah,
a little bit more street credit.
That's it.
Yeah.
And they knew that they couldn't get over on me because I'd done the same stupid stuff they had done.
Yeah.
I remember I had a Lance Corporal Poe had just come from Subic Bay, great kid, great patroller, knew how to man track the whole 9 yards. But one night, I get called by the OD, and he said, "Hey, we got a problem." I said, "Your Lance Corporal Poe just made the officer of the day stand tall." I'm like, "What?" He said, "Yeah, he was drunk, hiding in the bushes, completely naked. And as the officer of the day is coming by, he says, 'Halt! Who goes there?' The officer of the day says, 'The officer of the day, Lieutenant so-and-so.' He says, 'Advance and be recognized.' And the officer of the day, like, okay, walks forward, and Poe steps out of the bushes. 'All right, sir, come in friendly lines.' It's like, okay, Paul."
We call that a passage of lines.
Yeah,
Yes.
So it was that type of thing. I had a young kid, a young Indian, I forget his name, a great kid, but drunk as a skunk one night down on Court Street, which used to be a Wild Wild West show. General Gray cleaned all that up, but his buddy ended up punching out a taxi driver because he wouldn't take the Indian in the taxi, but that was it was a rough and tumble when you come in the Marine Corps. And you kind of knew that when you joined it. We're a bunch of fighters and a bunch of drinkers and that type of thing. But you also had to deal with a lot of racism that was going on. And we had a lot of guys who were on drugs. But we worked hard to clean all that out and move forward. So,
the Marine Corps was founded in a bar.
Yeah, that's right.
With the racism and the drugs and the drinking, you'd been exposed to the Marines now for 4 or 5 years before you got to your first unit. Is that just something that you never really noticed? Like maybe you'd heard about a little bit, but you hadn't had any personal experience with it before your first unit?
I think everybody talks about, ruckus, fighting, drinking, etc. Drink hard, fight hard, etc. Never let it stop you doing the job. Sometimes not as professional. Marine Corps has changed extensively now in the process. So that aspect of it, I just wasn't, in the drug side of it, I wasn't ready for or aware of. And then the racism side, I wasn't aware of, because everything you read, it's about brotherhood, we are all green, etc. But then to run into that, and I even ran into that as a captain years later. Not
just from the civilian world towards your troops,
but within the ranks.
Within the ranks.
Yeah.
I had if we jump a little bit forward to when I was a company commander in Hawaii, I had one morning in my office, and I had a young African American come in. We used to say dark green Marine, and he's black eye, bloody lip, the whole 9 yards. And I'm like, "What happened?" He said, "Sir, I'm coming here because last night I just got a blanket party, and they said, welcome to the Brotherhood. You're now, in the Black Clan type thing inside of the unit." And so I pulled all of the kids who were African American and I said, I don't care who you are, where you came from, what you did. I will throw every one of you in jail right now if you ever do this again. I said, there is only one thing that is initiation. That's called Parris Island. I said, anything else, that's it. I said, so if I ever hear of any one of you, and my language is a little bit better than
We'll say salty.
Yes, very much salty. And I ripped him a new butthole, and it went from there. And I never had a problem with it again. And a young Marine came up to me afterwards and said, "Sir, I thank you very much. I appreciate what you did for me." So
that's leadership.
Yep, that's what it is. And you don't sugarcoat it. You don't. I mean, Camp Lejeune for a while had a very Hispanic drug problem and clan problem going on out there. But you just got to attack it. You got to go after it, clean it up. So.
Okay. Let's go back to your first unit. How long did it take before you really felt like, okay, I know what I'm doing?
Is that possible if you're a lieutenant? Is that possible?
Well, I'm sure that it is. But I mean, it takes you a while to get adjusted, not just to new people that you're working with and working for, adjusting to your subordinates. You're an officer, so you have an NCO counterpart. You're in a new surrounding environment. You're not necessarily comfortable. You've been, aside from Parris Island, you had been pretty much in the Northeast the entire time. So, how long did it take you to really feel like you had climatized, I guess, as it were?
Well, it was I had done. I'm probably a little bit different than the rest of the guys because I had spent a whole extensive amount of time doing patrolling at Norwich, and it was my forte. I mean, I studied the Ranger book, Ranger Handbook.
7-8 back then.
Yep. And George Latham, who I'm about to go see later this afternoon, was a cadet who had already gone to Ranger school, and he was the epitome of a lithe, tall, squared away Ranger, and that was kind of reinforced in me there. So when I went to my first platoon, that's what I focused on. And I was already a swimmer, already a PT stud. So if you can have all that together, and then had great leadership. So within probably less than a month or so, I was on the ball running. And I had a good staff NCO, Staff Sergeant Arthur. I had some good team leaders, or squad leaders, Sergeant Murrow and Sergeant Washington, and they were great people. I had a few kids we had to kind of clean up, but overarchingly I had a great platoon who wanted to go somewhere, and I just said, look, we're going to do this with me, but I'm going to lead you from the front, and they loved it, and we PT like crazy and do the whole 9 yards, and that's where I live my life with them. And then it helped because our first deployment was Beirut. And I
was going to say, so it's 1981. The Iranian hostage crisis is, I say concluded with air quotes, of course, but we received the hostages back. But there's still turmoil going on in the Eastern Med over there. So tell us about Lebanon.
So as we know, the Israelis were in Lebanon. The PLO was in Lebanon. Arafat was there. You had Shabra Shatila went on. The Marine Corps went in to do peacekeeping. We came in peace. There's a great document on it by Mike Ivey. And so first then it was 2-8 who goes in first, and you have the incident with a young captain jumps on an Israeli tank, puts his pistol to the tank commander's head and says, "You don't get this tank out of here, I'm going to blow your brains out." And we separate the Israelis. They go back across the Green Line, which is a set of railroad tracks, and they're then patrolling. And we got being rocketed from the Shuf Mountains. I'm living in a bunker. I've got a picture of it. In the or the latrine or the privy, whatever you want to call it, is a box on top of a big can, and it's all sandbagged. And one of the niceties, I got to go back to ship and get a toilet seat and bring it back, and that was like luxury to have.
Because that makes it more palatable.
You got small wins, small victories.
Yeah. And then we'd rotate around. So we first started off at the Beirut airport, and we had I lived in a bunker. We had tents all sandbagged up, and we'd patrol all day long. You go out into downtown Beirut. We call it Kinville, and you'd patrol the city. We had a guy who was shooting Katyusha rockets, and we were trying to track him down. Previous to this, we had guys who were killed from it in the previous deployment, and it was what you expected. You were doing then irregular warfare, what we call it now. You were doing counterinsurgency operations. You're looking, and it was Hezbollah who was there.
Who are pretty new, because this is right after the revolution, Iranian Revolution. Yeah, so they're new.
They're IJO at the time.
They had something to prove.
Jihad, and they're now growing. And we're now in Beirut, and you're seeing the kids in the whole 9 yards. And that was my first introduction to how you deal with kids in the battlefield, and that type of thing. When we first got there, we had to build bunkers around the whole airport and reinforce them. And because there had been so much carnage and dead cows, dead horses, dead everything, you had dogs who were running around eating all this stuff, and so you had rabid dogs everywhere. So I remember my first shot and I were riding around on a gamma goat, shooting dogs, and I love dogs, and so this was real hard to do. But a friend of mine, DB Patton, was the platoon commander for the Amtraks. And during our deployment, he ended up going up to Shuf Mountains, and he saved a village and brought back, I think, 5 or 7 people who were literally on death row from frostbite and being frozen. And we delivered food and water and the whole 9 yards up there. And it's stuff, Beirut doesn't get talked about a lot. That's why, again, Mike Ivory's making this documentary. But it was my first introduction to combat. We watched the Israelis. We were on what was then called, started from the airport, rolled out to checkpoint 69, which was a tented area we had put together and, again, bunkered up in all 9 yards. Outside shower was your poncho liner, and I had gotten a water jug and put a hose on it, and that's your outside living conditions. We watched the Israelis get hit by a terrorist, blew up one of the Amtraks, and then their security, once after immediate action drill, is 150-degree 50 cal fire, and so all the Amtraks started banging it, and we're watching, and next thing you know, we're diving into bunkers because they're going right over our heads, and we're watching them. This guy running away in one of those old white jackets with the high collar and stuff, and we're watching them, and they're just pop, 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 and we just see him explode.
The pink mist.
Yeah, pink mist, and we're like, yay! Ooh, sorry.
Count it. Well, most of these at that point in 1981 or early 82, most of these Israeli, certainly the NCOs and the leaders, had fought several wars back in the 70s, and they were not putting up with nonsense.
It's funny because
the 7 days and then the Yom Kippur War.
We're patrolling down the Green Line, and you come up onto the tracks. That's the embarkation line there between the two of us. And all of a sudden, down about 1,000 yards, up come one of their patrols, and so we're moving towards each other, and then they patrol with a tank. They patrol the Sheridan tank, and so we're coming. So I tell my guys, okay, security halt, start walking forward. And I'm like, shalom. And the guy's like, a little bit of language here. Hey, who are you? I'm like, what? Who are you? Hey, where you from? I'm from Texas. So we start, shooting the bull. And what happens with two units, one foreign unit, one American unit, get together? What do? They change covers and hats. And
swap patches.
That's good stuff.
So we talking to them. Almost half of them are all from America.
Yeah, sure.
Dual citizens, because the young Jewish family, they go home and serve their country and all that. Just like we're watching today with Hamas. And then all our guys leave, and we look like them, and they look like us, and then off we go. And then one night we were doing security patrols, and we're coming around, and I'm using the terrain and to stay covered, and we had coordinated with the Lebanese Armed Forces, the LAF, they called it, and they were the most honest of the confessional government, which was Muslims, Druids, Catholics, Christians, all that.
Sure.
And for some reason, as we're coming through, he had gotten back behind us, and as we're about to come up, he sticks a pistol in my head, and luckily, we got the American flag on and all that, and like America, not Israel. And one of my buddies was about to cap him, but it just
close call.
Was, yeah.
So this was in 81, right?
Yeah. So this is now 80. This is 83. We're now in Beirut. So
okay.
April.
So at that point, did you still have a lot of Vietnam War veterans?
Yeah,
or
we still had
guys
a lot
with guys with experience there within your unit.
Not in my platoon, but in our company, yes.
Yeah, probably seniors.
Yeah, all your senior staff and COs. So.
Did they talk much about the difference between, war fighting in Lebanon versus Vietnam? Like, did they do a lot of compare and contrast between the two conflicts?
First sergeant was great for that, and he'd tell us this is how we dealt with things. And I had a good buddy of mine, Chris Stokes. His father was a colonel, Commander Colonel Mao back then, Marine Amphibious Unit, now Marine Expeditionary Unit. And we were getting a little bit cocky, and the first sergeant said, "Hey, this is how it used to be, so and he squared us away and got us back to speed."
Yep.
It was that's when the embassy blew up. They blew up the embassy April 18th, and so that was my first initial introduction to Hezbollah. And we were the first on the spot, and that's when I ran into Charlie Henderson, who wrote 93 Kills. So it was right then at that event.
So you arrive on it was a barracks bombing. So
this was the embassy.
The embassy was first. Sorry, thank you for that. So what's going through your head?
So all of a sudden we get the huge boom and plume, and we're the quick reaction. So we roll in, and it is a complete god awful. It's hell, and there's carnage everywhere, and we do a cordon,
which is saying something, because it was carnage all over Lebanon.
Yep.
So to say that it was carnage there, that's I guess it's just the freshest thing on display.
That's it. And the whole front of the building is gone, and I think we lost 18 Americans. The whole CIA architecture for Beirut was destroyed, and then I think it was like 38 or somewhat civilians who were killed in the process. And our job now is to provide security and help recover and get and bring everybody whatever's left out in whole 9 yards. And I'm living now. My CP is like 2 doors off the embassy. There's a house, and the house has a woodshed, and it's about as big as your closet. And that's now my CP for like 2 weeks. And we're just doing our thing. And making sure everybody's getting taken care of. And that's when one time I had what I thought was a Mercedes, which again was a normal terrorist vehicle, and I'm about to rip it up. And my first sergeant says, "Sit down, Mike, relax. It's one of our guys." And he knew what it was, and he talked to him and the whole 9 yards.
So you were there for 2 weeks. What was not just your platoon's I guess operation there? You said you guys were pulling security, right? But what was your company doing? I imagine each platoon kind of had a different.
Yeah. So the whole BLT is there. Battalion Landing Team is there because we are now the peacekeepers. So our responsibility is to keep the peace inside of Beirut between all of the factions and keep the Israelis from having interaction not in the right area, and simultaneously we're looking for bad guys. So we've got guys we used to call Rocket Man, who's shooting rockets at us. We're looking for him.
Rocket Man's still out there.
Oh yeah.
Haven't caught him yet.
Nope. And then we're patrolling the streets all the time. We're providing security to the airport, security in our sector, because the French are there. French power is there. They also got hit when they did the barracks building in October. This was April and October.
Mm-hmm.
We're the Italians. We're doing training. We're doing helicopter-borne operations. We're doing constant patrolling. We're doing all the things we normally do. We're just now doing it in a counterinsurgency operation inside of Beirut, a peacekeeping operation simultaneously. And our responsibility is to interact with the people, show the flag, show that America is there, and to help and provide some level of stability in the process as much as we can. And then simultaneously, you're dealing with, sometimes we got guys hit with hand grenades and those types of things. And then you also have guys through sheer negligence get killed by our own guys. People get shocked at negligent discharge and those types of things. So you're living a life. Now you're doing it overseas and you're doing the job.
I think a lot of people would also be surprised how in a combat situation or counterinsurgency operation, how many people we lose to just accidents. Mm-hmm. So non-enemy contact, just vehicle rollovers, and I mean, you mentioned negligent discharges, things like that. It's
and
carelessness and stupidity.
It happens. Jump forward to Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Sniper is cleaning his weapon, forgets to clear it, shoots a guy in his rack beside him. Yeah. It happens.
Yeah. It does. That's never going away.
Yeah. So, and I had a young lieutenant who was second platoon, and he walks. By this time, we had shifted to the American University as we bounce around because you're moving constantly to keep your presence changing. Mm-hmm. Comes back into the American University. We're living in these it's like an open deck area, and where our armory is this small cubby area, and we have all the weapons. And he comes in, goes to clear his weapon, improperly clears his weapon, and then. Your last thing is you pull the trigger to make sure it was cleared. He didn't do it, but he pulls the trigger, handing his weapon in, bounces off the floor, hits a kid in the hip. And he's the platoon commander, and he's supposed to know better. His platoon sergeant, Mark Carrington, is a great, great friend of mine. He went on to become my company gunner sergeant years later in the first Gulf War. Takes him back and gives him a physical and verbal beating. And goes from there. And
corrective action through physical exercise.
But he's not relieved.
No, he's not.
That's interesting because for us, like GWAT, Global War on Terror, that was one ND, and you get helicoptered back to the rear and never heard from again.
Yeah. Well, this given a time period where we are in the process, and there's some other circumstances around it, but that young lieutenant never went past being a lieutenant. He was gone afterwards.
So how long did you end up being in Lebanon?
We were there for, I think the total was 7 months, and it was a great experience. Back then, interesting, not like now where you have General Order Number 1, which is no alcohol whatsoever. We'd come back, I'd go to patrolling every once in a while. One of the shopkeepers would say, give me a bottle of Johnny Walker Black or Johnny Walker Red, whatever, type thing. Or we'd come back to the headquarters, and on every Friday night, you'd get to go up and have one beer, and you'd interact with the Brits, the French, whatever. That's how I got augmented. I had to go see my first general officer chain of command, then General Meade, Boston boy. So I see my battalion commander, and sir, Lieutenant McCusker reporting. He says, okay, go to the bar, go see General Meade. He's going to interview you for your augmentation, because all Marine officers come in as reservists, and then you get augmented to become a regular officer. So I go see him, blah, blah, blah. Sir, reporting. He says, Mike, and what do? We talk about Boston. So we have a whole conversation about Boston and the whole 9 yards, and then he says, okay, Mike, you're augmented. Go get some. And then we come
just
back.
A conversation. That's nice.
So, and
something tells me that was not the typical augmentation talk.
It was not. We come back, but on the way back, we stop in Key West, Florida, and that's our time to decompress.
Decompress is a good term. Yeah.
And so we spend almost a week, I think, in Key West and have a great time. And Captain Coolman Kershaw, my company commander, is he's the epitome of the tall, dark, handsome stud, and he gets interviewed by some Hollywood-like looking reporter in the whole 9 yards, and we have a great time down at Sloppy Joe's and taking care of Marines and walking around and being Marines,
being back in the world,
and then we come back. Since that's my major deployment initially, I get a chance to make a decision to go to a secondary unit. I have always wanted to go to the reconnaissance command, so I go and do a interview in a assessment selection for a 2nd Reconnaissance Battalion. And the guy then was Colonel McCormick, who had been my IOC chief when I was going through infantry officers course. So it was nice to see a face who knew me, but they will dog the crap out of you. I mean, you'll do 3-mile run, full ruck, double running over course, swim, the whole 9 yards, and then you'll do an interview with the boss to make sure that you are of right mind. And then if you get selected, you then come in and you'll either go to basic reconnaissance course or ranger school. And at the time period, PRC was going, so I got to go to ranger school, which was a dream of mine forever. So going to that was just a great event to do. So,
real quick, before we proceed, tell us about the barracks bombing. That's one of the number one things I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah. So by that time, I'm at ranger school when that happens. But so a friend of mine who's literally there, he's the officer of the day that day, M.A. Singleton, artillery officer, and he was on the quick reaction force. Had already been hurt once, purple heart, and his buddy had been killed by Katyusha rockets. So he goes back to Beirut. It's October 23rd. We've already had a lot of incidents going on.
You guys were still in country at this time, or you guys had just left?
We had left. We left in like July, I think it was, July, August. We did a complete turnover. 1/8 comes in, 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, Colonel Garrity. And then they go to the barracks where they are. That's where the MAO headquarters is. And then the BLT headquarters and company and some of the auxiliary staffs and stuff. And all the other companies are out on the perimeter positions, the airport, American University, Checkpoint 69. They're all over Beirut. That morning, Hezbollah got a guy who loaded up a big truck full of explosives. You get the gate guards who were standing there, and this guy barrels into it, goes through the gate. And one of the problems when we were there initially, the rules of engagement were you had to be fired upon before you could fire.
Yeah.
There was conversations about, are you in a condition 1 or condition 4 weapon, which is magazine in around the chamber, or no magazine, or just magazine, everything on safe, etc., etc.
It's an amber, right? Mm-hmm. Amber.
I don't know what they call it.
Yeah, there's the different stages of weapon readiness
status,
right
yeah.
now. So,
every time I left our position, I had my guys go into condition 1, which was magazine in around the chamber, weapon unsafe. I said, because I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And so we had this guy goes barreling into the barracks and just decimates the barracks. It's gone. 240 Marines, and then simultaneously they hit the French Paras. That's the predominance of 1/8. I'm at Recon Battalion now, so we have a whole platoon who's now still deployed with them. We lose the Charlie Company. I think it's 1st Platoon at the time. Red Jens was their platoon commander, a good friend of mine. We lose almost the whole platoon. And now they're trying to recover folks. My buddy M.A., who was the officer of the day, had just left the building to go back to his, where he stayed with his artillery battery, and when the place blew. So it was horrendous. He called it hell when he rolled back into it. So it was just carnage, people, bodies on fire. Barracks was literally leveled. And now we're in a recovery mode. And then my unit, which I previously with 2-6, they have to fly over to reconstitute a Marine unit that's now been decimated, which is the worst battle casualty for the Marine Corps since World War II.
So
what was because you guys had just left, what was the reaction within your element? Since, were those the barracks that you guys had been staying at?
We all stayed there. Everybody, everybody rolled in and out of it, and that was at MAO headquarters and BLT headquarters. So it was rage. It was let's go kill somebody, and then it was loss of. These are all of us. We all live at Camp Lejeune, and the reporter process and the way it was reported was atrocious. You heard President Reagan talk and the whole 9 yards, but the local reporters, all they wanted to do was see, mothers crying and all that, and they infiltrated onto base and were knocking on wives' doors, and while their son or husband or whatever was over there, and they're trying to catch the reaction of the family, finding out that their husband or son is now dead. And years later, when I went to I think it was a amphibious warfare school, and we had POA, Public Affairs Day. We had all these NBC, ABC, all that. I said, "You people are nothing but maggots of the dead, and you feed off of us, and you're looking to see this." And that was quoted. It was a good day for me.
Maggots.
Yeah, but it was a terrible event. We lost a lot of folk, and that's why we have all the pear trees now on Lagoon Boulevard for that, in the Beirut Memorial, and that literally brought Jacksonville and the base much closer together because of the adversity of that event.
It's weird how that works.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it does, yeah.
Yep.
And then that ultimately precipitated in us leaving Lebanon.
There was a Casper Weinberger, the president, and then I forget the Secretary of Defense, but there was this whole conversation of what's our reaction? Do we bomb the Shuf Mountains? And they held off and didn't do it. They didn't do anything. And but then I think it was just before we took off, they then shot the Shuf Mountains up to go against IGO and the people who did it.
Yeah.
And we had minimal to no success in what transpired. But then we left.
Yeah.
And it was a mess. And this was the beginnings of what is now the war on terrorism.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can make a strong argument that
this is it.
Beirut.
Yep. It started it. This is the first time the big IED became a big thing, a vehicle IED. And it was successful, and it killed 58 French paras. And it went from there. And IGO then became on the map Abu Maghdaya. He was their number one terrorist chief. He went on to do great from their perspective things. He's the one who shot Stethman, or his guys. He was on the plane, flight 847. I ended up, when I went to Recon Battalion, I ended up going back to Beirut. TWA flight 847 got taken hostage, and they bounced around Europe, then flew into Beirut. We were in Gibraltar, I think, at the time, and we had to cross deck onto the USS Saipan from the Spartanburg County because the county went down. My platoon, the SEAL Team 2 platoon, and the STV Team 2, dead. Evans Thompson, great guy. He went on to become a captain in the Navy, STV team guy, real squared away. And so Delta comes on board the Saipan. They're going to go after the plane. We're going to do the beach extract site, so if they have to come up from the beach. And it was like, okay, let's go. We're putting in civilian clothes and getting dressed, and I'm watching the SEALs, and they're cutting off sawed-off shotguns and all my yards, and remember rules of law and all the rules of war and LOAC, and how these guys, what you're supposed to use guns and not guns, and whatever, and all that's out the window because we're now to go save a buddy. And but then they shot Stethman and threw him off the plane, and so we never had the opportunity to go get him.
Yeah.
So, so it was that place was a terrible place for the longest time, and it had been the what they call it, the Las Vegas of the Riviera.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful, beautiful place. Yeah. So then they tore it to shit. And then it happened again in what was it, 96, 97, in the whole process. No, 2006, 2007, when Hezbollah went against Israel again. They had all that going on. Interestingly, years later, I'm now teaching at the Defense Institute for DILS, it's called, and we're teaching foreign officers up in the Naval War College in Rhode Island on counterterrorism policy, etc. And we had a whole slew of Lebanese officers, and two of them were kids when I was in Lebanon. And they said, yeah, they don't remember me personally, but we remember the Marines patrolling our streets. Mm-hmm. So, and when you look at, they gave a presentation of the 2006-2007 war, you would have thought you were in World War II in Germany, and how the buildings were destroyed, and it was all those huge camps they had.
Dresden, 1945, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was a mess. So, and these guys were in all-out combat against Hezbollah. So, and just as we're watching today against Hamas.
When when you guys left, when your unit left and came back to the States, at the end of your 6-7 months, however long you were there, did you feel like you had made a positive impact? I mean, again, not knowing that in a couple of months they're gonna blow up the barracks, and then America's gonna decide it's time to pull out.
Yeah, we did. We because we met lots and lots of folks. We talked to a lot of the kids and all that, and you could gauge where you were and how the kids acted with you. Mm-hmm. And we had we played a lot of soccer and kicked the ball around and that type of thing. And I had the shopkeep owners would give us food and stuff as we patrol, and so we had some guys that could hurt, but overarchingly, you felt like you kept the peace, and that was your responsibility. We trained a lot. We trained with a lot of different foreign units, so that's always a benefit.
Is it though?
Actually, I mean, yeah, we did with the French paras and with the Brits, and they were good. So, as a matter of fact, I bumped into some of the French Marines in my last job, and they remembered their guys. I mean, much older than they were, doing that mission, and it was great personally and professionally to do that, and you felt like you did your job, which was peacekeeping, which is very hard to do. When you're taught to be a warfighter and kill everything that moves, it was called the 3-block war, which is you're doing peace operations one, counterinsurgency in the other, and all-out combat in the third. And that was General Krulak's conversation years later. So,
did that feeling of accomplishment change after? Whether it's for you personally or the general feeling of your unit, a couple of months later when they blew up the barracks?
Yeah, I think across the Marine Corps, when they blew up the barracks and we didn't reciprocate, and then we pulled out, it's like, what was it all for? And if you ever have the opportunity to listen to They Came in Peace, which is a documentary being put together, it's like that piece of the Marine Corps was forgotten. When you read the books about Marine Corps history, you may get a paragraph about Beirut, and sometimes people look at it as it was a black eye for the Marine Corps because we lost so many in such time, and we had leadership who put us in the wrong place without the right rules of rules of engagement, and that went to the very senior leadership of the theater sink, back then, the COCOM commander and that process. And then General Gray at the time, who was 2nd Marine Division, and he went on to become commandant, and he was the one guy who stood up and said, "This is my fault." And you look like Abbey's Gate and what transpired there. No one has ever done that. He did that. He stood up and said, "I'll take the buck here. It all stops here. My fault, my responsibility, my Marines, etc."
Accountability and responsibility.
Yep. So he's a great guy. He's about to be buried in Arlington next month, the 29th. Just a phenomenal man. Papa Bear, he was the nickname. Friend of the family's supposed to come to my wedding, but I said, "Sir, please do not. You will make it a circus." But a great guy. He'd roll up, to say hello, he'd punch you in the chest. And he was just
with all due respect.
Yeah, all great.
I've had a few of those.
Yeah, he'd come up. We had just come off the deployment when our reconnaissance unit, and when we went back, and I'm standing next to the SEALs, and he's like, "Hey, Mike," punches me, and then he punches the SEAL, and he just caught him just right. He was like shifting or something and hit him in the chest.
Tossed him,
fell over. And Gray starts up and says, "You guys aren't that tough. I could never knock Mike and his lads over." So, and we all just.
Are you telling me that there's some kind of sibling-like rivalry between the Marine Corps and the Navy, particularly the SEALs? Exactly
right. The SEALs, the reconnaissance guys, and now the Raiders, and it's like, hey, we're better than they are. They're better than we are. Whatever it is, but it's brother and sister. We just have a great time chatting with each other, and we always do great training together, and our paths meet because they're in the water, we're in the water on the reconnaissance side, and so it's okay. What makes us different from them, and that type of thing. But
so let's put a bow on Beirut for now. So you're back at Lejeune. You're going through. I want to say you're going through recon.
Yep.
school. So you end up in the Benning School for Wayward Boys. And so how's Ranger School?
Ranger School's great. It's again, I know patrolling, so that's the meat and potatoes of leadership. But the endurance factor in that school is phenomenal. I mean, I rip up my feet. I'm down to like 125, so I lose a heck of a lot of weight.
You can smell it.
I said, oh yeah. And then you're rucking everywhere. I'm not a paratrooper yet, so I don't get to jump out into any of the operations. So I'm doing the helicopter infills.
You're better off.
Yeah, it keeps you from breaking stuff. But I have a great time. And we go to do the normal city phase, mountain phase. We go to the desert. We do that. I think it was Fort Ord.
Yeah, they don't do that anymore, but yes.
And then jungle phase in Florida. And the Florida phase was the hardest part for me because my feet had just been completely torn up and had literally the whole duct tape on your feet just to keep them because they were so destroyed in the process. And then I remember the last ruck out, which is the day we finish, and you just don't know when it ends, and it's just go, and you're carrying 75 to 100 pounds on your back, and you just go.
Movement to daylight.
That's it. It's movement.
And then some.
But I loved it. It was to put on the Ranger tab was a dream of mine. It was on my bucket list to do that, and I was really proud. And from guys like I said, George Latham, who was a Ranger back then and went on to become SF guy and worked for the SFODD and all that stuff. So it was great stuff, and I loved it. And when I came back, then I took all that skill set and instilled it on my guys. And most of them had gone to BRC, and they focus on more the amphibious side and doing combi reps, beach reps, all the reports we do for surf and that type of thing. And I focus on more on the patrolling. We do a lot of patrolling and reconnaissance community, but Ranger School was bar none probably the best patrolling school there is.
How common, because you had two choices, either Ranger School or
BRC.
The BRC. How common at that time was a Ranger qualified, lieutenant, captain?
Very little.
Very little.
Inside the Marine Corps, very little.
Yeah.
So
okay.
It's it just the way it happened. It was August time period, and it was out of sync.
That's a great time to be a Benning.
Oh, that's awful. Harmony Church in August.
There is no better time to be a Benning than August, September.
But you roll into November. We didn't graduate till like just before. I think it was like late November, going to Christmas. So you can say you're a Winter Ranger, but it was minimal. We had 5 officers who were Marines with us in the class.
In a class of how many?
I think it's like 200. I think
that sounds. It varies, of course, but
yeah.
Yeah. And we all lived in the mountain phase. We all lived in the same little hooch. I don't think they're there anymore, but it was like the wooden hooch with the camp stove, kerosene lantern thing, and Marine Corps birthday. As you know, November 10th. The RIs come in, Ranger instructors come in, and they give us a little cupcake type thing. No, actually, it was they gave us the head Marine at school got us a small cake, and we devoured it in about 2 seconds.
Calories, man. Take what you can.
Calories, yeah. But it was there. I was there when they blew up the barracks, so they pulled us all out and said, "Okay, this is what we're all like. Okay, we're out. We're going back. We're leaving. We don't care. We're going back to our unit. We're going to go to war." And like, "Nope, sorry, you're here. Your Marine Corps has already said you're not leaving." And we were kind of pissed, but we knew this was for the greater good in the process. So we just drove on. But a great experience. Mountain phase, desert phase was interesting. Learning how to fight in the desert and patrol in the desert was great. And then jungle phase was awesome. Lots of snakes, lots of the whole 9 yards, and that got me ready for my next deployment. Was we went off to schools with I think it was 2-2 Panama and the whole 9 yards, and did a jungle warfare school in there. And since I had just finished patrolling, at Ranger school, going through that jungle expert course was simple.
Those were pretty back to back, pretty close.
Pretty back to back, yeah. So I rolled right through there, and and the lads did great because we had instilled all the skill set, and we knew. I mean, I had them doing all the same things we did at Ranger School, so they did all of it great, and we did a great job. And had pygmy snakes and spitting turtles and frogs and those pointy things that go through your hand if you grab a tree in the middle of the night. So it was a great place.
Everything in the jungle is trying to kill you.
Exactly. So, and you'd have to stop because it was so black at night. So you'd stop back to back, and you set a perimeter and put your weapon on your lap, and then go to sleep. Well, you normally put your poncho down and just kind of sit. Well, the next morning I'd get up and take the poncho up, and there's a snake sitting right. I was sitting on the snake, and because my ruck is so heavy, it's not going anywhere, and you just fall asleep.
Yeah.
But that was fun.
Now, you just went down. You just went down there for school, or you went down like you did a rotation with your entire unit, and while you were there, you went to school.
Yeah, this was a rotation for the whole unit. It was a unit training event, and I was the reconnaissance platoon attached to the unit, and so they go through Jungle Panama School.
The entire unit went through the school.
Yep, and they
Okay.
get evaluated for jungle operations, and we get evaluated.
So this was kind of like a JRTC, NTC.
Yep.
So
A training center.
a collective training.
Yeah, a training center exercise.
Yep.
How long was that?
I think it's like a month or more.
Okay, yeah.
I don't remember the distance, but it's
Between 4 and 6 weeks.
Yeah. It's a time period.
And what year is this?
This is now 84, 85 time period.
So still a couple years before Just Cause.
Yeah.
So that's in the future. Okay.
Yep. And then and it was after that I then go with 2-8 and go back to Beirut, and when they go off to Stuffman. So it was I got to do a lot of great things. Took my unit out to the Marine Corps has a constant rotation of guys. You go to Twin End Palms, you come back, you go to you do evaluations at Camp Lejeune. So you're constantly training. So even though you're at home base, just like here,
Yep.
You're in this constant cycle of
You're home, but you're not home.
you're getting ready to go.
Training.
Yep, getting ready to go and then go. And then you make great friendships across the board. You get better and better. I had 2 or 3 different staff NCOs. I had Dave Slusser, gunnery sergeant type, who was a phenomenal gunnery sergeant. He was my recon platoon sergeant. Wild Bill Fallon was also mine. He was a staff NCO before Dave. And Dave was the epitome of amphibious reconnaissance Marine. And then I had a Sergeant Curry, who went on to become a doctor. He was a chief warrant officer and a doctor. Sergeant Oakes, who was just a good old country boy, played with snakes all the time.
I know a few of those.
It's not a healthy habit.
And Sergeant Gresco, who was he went to Ranger School as one of my team sergeants. And he was a great kid, and he had great foresight of being a reconnaissance Marine and just a squared away guy. He went on to become a hard hat diver in New Orleans and all that. And I still talk to all these guys all the time. Jeff went on to become a GS guy, and then he worked for OSD, and for the Army, he became his WMD guy, so doctor WMD.
Weapons mass destruction.
Yeah, and then he ended up becoming there because they dealt with all the gas mask stuff and distributions and all that. He ended up becoming their guy for the distribution for the COVID stuff, and he's a great guy, and he's still going strong. And I was trying to get him down to JSA to become the WMD instructor.
Yeah,
he's a doctor and just smart people. So.
Okay. Well, so you guys returned from Panama back to Lejeune, and then you went over to you went back to Lebanon.
So we did. Then I get attached to, because reconnaissance units, you get down attached.
Tasked out.
Yeah, like LOSDs, you get attached out to another BLT, and we get through LF6F, which is getting ready to deploy in an amphibious ready group, ARGBU, Marine Expeditionary Unit, amphibious ready group, and then you deploy to the Med, and you'll bounce around the Med doing operations all over the place.
Just essentially on call for your a quick reaction force?
We are the America's 911 force. So we are there. We are out. We are prepared. We're combat ready with all of our assets, full-blown MAGTF at the MU level, and we can do everything.
It's a Marine Air Ground Task Force.
Exactly right. And we have a higher headquarters, and then we have a BLT headquarters, and we have tanks, artillery, reconnaissance,
the whole thing.
The whole 1 yards. We have it all.
Yeah.
And we work together. We've trained together. We've trained with the Navy. We had SEALs with us and SDV guys, so we have a full complement of a full capability to go kick some ass, whatever it is. And then, so we're training. We end up doing a lot of training with the Royal Marines, the French. I get involved with the French Commando Joubert, and I work with those guys a lot. And I get inculcated into their life and their thing, and had a great time with them. And then we just keep on going. And then we were for the Queen's birthday in Gibraltar. And then this 847 happens. We end up going to Beirut. That doesn't kick off like it's supposed to, so we keep on going. The last operation we have is Morocco. We do a big amphibious assault in Morocco and come off of that and finish, and then come back home.
How long? Okay, so you guys are floating around the Mediterranean as part of a carrier group?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, the Mediterranean's pretty big, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not, right? So were you guys just going from port to port, or from port to sea for a couple of days and then into another port?
So the way the Marine Corps does is they orchestrate well before a year plus in the TEEP training execution plan and whatever, and we now set up who you're going to train with, where you're going to go, what amphibious operation you're going to support in support of the regional combatant commanders. This is UCOM now. And so we'll go do 3 or 4 major exercises at JCS level exercises and doing amphibious operations and the whole 1 yards. We'll do stack displays. We'll do individual training with individual countries in small units, and then we'll do some port calls. We'll pull into port somewhere, and we went to Cannes, France. I got to see the gal who did Pennies from Heaven, Clint Eastwood's his girlfriend's type thing, and we had a great time there. We went to Gibraltar, saw the Queen's birthday, ran into the SBS, got drunk, did amphibious operations, had a great time.
Well, not wild drunk.
No,
Okay.
Recovering. It was, I mean, those guys they are the best in the water. But don't ever drink with the Brits, because they will drink you one of the day.
Well,
So,
I was going to make a joke earlier when you back in Lebanon, you were saying, "Oh, we got to have 1 drink a week," and we were with the Brits and the French. I was like, the Brits are never drinking 1 drink a week. And
the French are drinking all the time. I mean, they had cognac and all their pieces. You do operation that day, and diving, shooting, whatever you're doing, and then that night they'd have their CP set up, and you'd walk in. And it's like a full-blown table with all the stuff. We train with the French Foreign Legion. They're like crazy.
yeah, those guys are hard.
And they did it the same thing. And so you're doing all this coalition training in the process, and it's really TTPs and sharing that.
Pretty much exclusively with NATO forces.
NATO forces.
Yeah.
And then when you finish that up, now that was like the first MUSOC. We were with 2-8. We were the first MUSOC, Marine Expedition Unit Special Operations Capable.
Yep.
That was a General Gray thing, and we were the first one to kick it, and that was a great time. So we were doing a lot of helicast and spy, special patrol insertion extraction training guys and that type of thing. Spanish special forces, Brits, French. We are doing a lot of training with them. SEALs are doing a lot of dive ops, a lot of demolitions work. We're doing that too. Like that, we did the Commander Joubert. We're doing a lot of live fire, patrolling skills, immediate action drills, all those things that we're doing with all these foreign units and having a great time doing it. And you're doing it in every country you're going to. And then you get a respite to go to a port and have a port visit, and then walk around and enjoy the place and the scenery.
24 or 48 hours?
Normally it's like 48 hours, and then get back up on ship and off you go to the next place.
Yeah. This is something the Navy and the Marines does far better than the Army does.
Oh yeah, and it's great. But you're always there, and because you're always there, you're the 9/11 force, which means you could be in a port today having a drink in a bar in less than 24 hours. You're in combat. You're doing immediate action somewhere, a peacekeeping operation or something. You're going to do because something happened and we are there.
Quick recall status, of course. So,
and that's what makes the MEU the premier force for the Marine Corps, because we are out at the pointy edge of despair, ready to go, with guns ready, and we can do it all. And we can do in extremis. We can do all types of things. So the force debts and reconnaissance units that we had on board our ships were all direct action capable and the whole 9 yards. And it really happens because I'll always bring in the pros from Dover, but the Marine Corps MAGTF on the MEU is a kick-ass capability. So.
Are you a junior captain at this point?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I'm still on that last deployment. I'm a senior first lieutenant.
Okay.
About to become a captain.
Yep.
And by the time I come back,
You'd already been chosen. Like you knew that you were hitting the list.
I knew I was selected.
Yeah.
So at that time, then after that, I go to Paris Island, and then Paris Island, and I go and become a series commander, and I train recruits. I get drill instructors. I do through like 3 or 4 series where I have drill instructors who are training recruits.
The basic training company commander.
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
Platoon commander, then company commander. We call it series commander, then company commander. And then I get become a company commander for what's called casual company, the kids who are getting out because of medical or whatever. And
well, before you move on from that, when you were the basic training company commander, you had just been in Paris Island as a basic trainee yourself 6-7 years before. Had you already noticed things starting to change?
It was a complete letdown because all the mystique about drill instructors and they are gods and they are like machines because they're always perfect.
They're always there. The uniform is always right. Yeah.
And then when I'm a series commander, which is really a platoon commander, and I'm running series, now you see all the tricks of the trade. I remember one time where had to come in and knock on the drill instructor's door. Sir, Private McCusker reporting his order, and there's no one there. I had to go knock on the drill instructor's wall locker. Sir, time to get up. And the drill instructor comes out of the wall locker like, and he's looking perfect. And I'm like, oh my God, Now, being my background, I have a little bit of like, hey, is this real or is this Memorex? But I see all this then on the backside of it as a series commander and all the counselings and everything that we go through that for a recruit to go through and how you put together all the training, all the requirements. The whole process of leadership at Paris Island is a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
And the drill instructors have a guidebook, and Paris Island has a guidebook. I went on to become a depot inspector, which means I have 3 drill instructors who work for me. Tom Burns, another guy with me, and he's a big runner. And we have 2 female drill instructors. And they're studs, and then we go inspect and make sure that our responsibility is to keep them on book and make sure they're not doing anything stupid. And I
make sure everybody's adhering to the guidebook.
To the guidebook. And there are times, and we had a guy named then Colonel Stanley who went on to become a general. And there are 2 ways to look at this. You're a depot spy, which is a vernacular that they were called, or you're a depot inspector to help. And I viewed it as a way to help, as having been a series commander and all. So when I would go back then was a 1st Battalion was when I was a series commander, and I'd look in the window of the squad bay, and if I see something wrong, I'd knock on the window and get the drill instructor's attention and go like, and,
we're always watching.
Yeah, we're always there. And then I knew all the hats, so I talked to them and said, hey guys, it's 9 o'clock. They're supposed to be sitting on their foot lockers, cleaning boots or whatever, and make sure they're not doing something stupid. But you got to see all the styles of leadership. 3rd Battalion is different from 2nd Battalion. 2nd Battalion is different from 1st. And then we had 4th Battalion, which was women. So you get to see all that stuff and how we train. And now the Marine Corps has now integrated the women into the other battalions, and which is different than what it was when I was there. But it was different. And then when I became the company commander for Casual Company to help kids get out, now you have kids who are forlorn because they can't be a Marine. You've had kids who try to commit suicide. You've had kids who were kicked out for medical reasons, and it's devastating, especially when a large percentage of Marines are family Marines. Father's Marine, cousins of Marine, uncles of Marine, great-grandfathers.
There's a lot riding on that.
Oh, yeah. And numerous times I had to make sure I had suicide watch in the whole 9 yards.
Take the bootlaces.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Boots, belts, the whole 9 yards. And there are times when a kid get hurt, medically wise, they have to get fixed before they can be discharged. So, and that can take months or even sometimes even a year or so. And we had kids who've been there for a long time. And you think about it, they're at Paris Island, they're not going to be a Marine, they're surrounded by Marines, yet they have to walk around without in this uniform and never have an equal.
Basically, in a constant state of shame.
And there's a stigma involved with all of that, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I had great Gunner Sergeant Goudreau and a Gunner Boudreau and a Gunner Sergeant Gros, both from Louisiana. Both of them had weird ass accents, but they were great. They had all been drill instructors, and so they were the epitome of professional. And they took care of it. And there were times where, when the father came to meet the son who didn't make it, you had to be aware. And I'd put drill instructors outside of the meeting room, and we had microphones so we could listen and hear the son, Dad, I'm not going to make it because of X. And sometimes the X was homosexuality or something else, who name it, something that wasn't, at that point in time, wasn't looked at as favorable. And the father would then commence to go after his kid. And I'd go! And the drill instructor would run in and separate them and set them down, and we'd have counselings and that type of thing. So that was an interesting perspective.
That's wild.
Yeah. So,
as a trainee, you only have a scope of what is immediately in your near future. Like, this is what the training schedule says is coming up in the next 24 hours. I'm ready for this block, this block, this block, this block. So you really only have a limited view of everything that's going on around you. But going back as a series commander or company commander, you have a much broader view. What was, as a series commander or company commander, what was the most, mind-blowing or image-shattering thing that you saw or experienced? Like, you just could not believe that this was happening.
Different from your story as a drill instructor, when you become a Paris Island or Marine Corps drill instructor, you are held to the highest standard. And I just bumped back into a Sergeant Goss, who was an infantry guy. We have a lot of guys who are all different MOSs who are drill instructors. And I could lose a drill instructor, and he would get drill instructor or whatever, lose the MOS, whatever, and get shit canned for some of the most minuscule things that if you were in the fleet, it would be that's a normal day. And Sergeant Goss was an infantry guy, and so one time we were on the range, and some kid was doing something wrong with a weapon, live fire weapon, and again, most of the time they'll walk around with the punch rod, and I think he tapped the kid in the head or in the shoulder or something, and somebody that I wasn't aware of was watching, and he almost lost it because he hit a recruit. Again, not maliciously.
Tapping versus striking.
Yes.
Yeah. With just the cleaning rod?
Cleaning rod. And so, so the rules for a drill instructor are very, 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 very tough. But they try to keep it very professional because of McEwen and what transpired in the guidebook and all that stuff. But and that was, I'd see all these great guys, and then you'd see him, he's gone. He's been defrocked, whatever, in the process. And that I found to be very hard because these were great Marines. And that's why when I become a inspector, I made sure when I'm on my way to make sure that the guys who were good and we're not doing anything malicious, but made a mistake, we're taken care of in the process. And there are guys out there who get the hat, and the hat is power, and power goes to people's head. Yeah. Power is corrupt, extreme power is extremely corrupt. And I have seen guys who were just vicious and malicious, and okay, you're gone, you're done.
Maybe enjoying it a little too much.
Yeah, way too much. and that just isn't tolerated. Father, Lejeune's conversation is father-son leadership, scholar-student leadership, and we live by that. My belief has always been we in the Marine Corps at Paris on crew training spend a little too much time on the yelling side of the house, and I believe in like the Royal Marines. The stresses should be the event. Now, in the first 2 weeks, there's always the inculcation to what is the Marine Corps.
The breakdown before the build-up.
Yeah.
Correct.
So once we start getting into it, my belief has always been, okay, it's the event. It's the 20-mile ruck. It's the swim. It's whatever. Hey, right, you can do this, but if you don't make this, you're out. And that's the stress versus a guy with a hat yelling at you. By a point in time, he should be encouraging you to go harder, be better, be stronger, fight, don't quit. And I think that's kind of where we missed the boat in that conversation.
I mean, there's a diminishing return. I mean, the shouting and screaming is a tool, not an end in and of itself.
Yeah. From my experience, and I worked when I was a very fresh young drill sergeant straight out of the school. I had a great senior drill sergeant who provided some great mentorship, and it was all, yes, everybody is screaming for the breakdown for the first 2 weeks, and then slowly you begin the build-up where one of the drills is not yelling anymore.
Yep.
And then as you progress, by the time you get to you're essentially done with the basic training, but now you're in AIT portion. Nobody's screaming anymore, unless the trainee really screwed up. Because you're right. I mean, the stressor is the training, knowing that you need to do this, or
it's a gate.
You're gone, or you're recently. Yeah, it's a gate you have to get through, or you're getting turned around. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with that.
That's what I like about Ranger School. You're a no-go at this station, Ranger. Go back. And that's important to make sure that, hey, what you're getting, the Eagle Globe and Anchor, is a passage. It's a rite of passage that you have to do all these things, and you have to do it on your own, and not by someone yelling at you, but by your internal fortitude to pass. And so that's why we have the Crucible and the whole 9 yards now at the end, and that's when they get the Eagle Globe and Anchor. But years ago when General Gregg, I was at AWS, I wrote a paper, are we American Commandos or Paper Tigers? Mm-hmm. And that was my thesis in the conversation. And we're doing a better job at it in the process. So the kids that are coming out today are much better in the process than they were when we were younger. There's still always a conversation, are they as tough as we were as kids? And I don't think the normal American kid today is ever as tough as we were, because we did fighting as fun as kids, and nowadays you can't punch each other and walk away as friends. So
it's a different world, in a lot of ways.
I think every generation feels that way to at least some degree. But yes, especially after spending the last 20 plus years at war, it's definitely different in this current generation of troops.
So let's wrap up our part on Paris Island as far as basic. Mm-hmm. You're junior captain at this point. What year is it? We're into the late 80s now.
Late 80s. I go to AWS, do all the amphibious warfare school where you learn to become a field grade officer. Marine Corps tries to teach you 3 levels up, so you learn operational tactics, leadership, your MAGTAFRI, you're learning about joint operations. You're getting into how to be a Battalion 3 operations side, how to be a battalion commander, kind of to the point. And then you go back to the fleet. And I go back to the fleet, which is 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines in Hawaii, K-Bay. So we fly out to K-Bay, and I'm expecting at least a week, 2 weeks to get all checked in, get the house, the family in a house. I have a wife and a daughter. I have my daughter at Paris Island because I was in my B billet, but I'm never there because you're always in the field training and deploying, 4 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. That's your day. But now I'm in Hawaii. After day 2, they come on and say, okay, Mike, we need you to come to base, and you're going to be a McCree evaluator, which is a Marine Corps Readiness Evaluation Test for units to say, you're good to go.
Basically get their training certificate.
Yep. Yeah. So I have to leave the wife at the hotel, and I go to base. spend the next 2 weeks in the field evaluating another unit. I evaluate a company because I'm a company commander, so I evaluate that company. And I was 1-3 at the time, and I'm in 3-3. And then you start all over again. Get checked in, start the training, and now we're doing our train-ups. And in Hawaii, there's minimal training areas, so we're now going to Pahakaloa training area, which is off base. It goes to the Big Island, and you're doing a month or so out there in an extreme environment. It's almost like desert because it's all lava dogs and dust, and you're literally covered in dust all day long, and you're living in Quonset huts, and you're patrolling and shooting and firing and live fire and all that kind of stuff.
And that lava dust is no joke, especially trying to keep your weapons clean. It's like moon dust. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
It gets everywhere, and by the time you finish it, all your utilities, which are camouflage uniforms, are brown and that type of thing. But it's all great training. And then we get ready and we go. I have Kilo Company as my company commander, and we then do our McCree, and the biggest, and again, lead from the front. We're doing log drills because I grew up Ranger stuff and all that, and in recon, and log drill is a basic thing we do all the time, which is lift, do the whole 1 yards, boat drills. We become a boat company, so we're doing all the boat raids and training. We do the McCree. The night before we finish is the last raid. We're supposed to do amphibious Amtrak raid. The tracks don't show up. My battalion commander is a guy named Colonel John C. Garrett, great guy. And he calls, the three companies come in, and we sit, poncho overhead. So he said, okay, we're here. You got to go there, attack that. It's like 8 miles away. He said, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. The tracks aren't going to make it. They broke down. He said, what do you want to do? And I don't know if you've ever read the book Starship Trooper.
Yep, long time ago.
Yeah, on the bounce, which is when you drop out. I said, okay, sir, we're on the bounce. That was my saying, which means ruck up and move out. So he said, okay. I said, yep. I said, but we're not going to go here. We're going to go this way. We're going to go over the lava field, and I have a McCree Evad with me. And he's like, you'll never make it. I said, you don't know us. And so Leon, Dale Lambauer was the other company commander at the time. Leon Papp was the 3 Alpha. And so I go back to the boys and I say, all right, guys. I said, we're rucking tonight. I said, we're rucking at speed is our security. So
speed is security.
So ruck up. I said, and I get my young lieutenant up front, and for the life of me, I've gone blank with his name. Great kid. I get Phil Scuda and Harris and the other kid. It's a great guy. I said, your point? I said, this is where we're going. I said, and we're going at breakneck speed, so just haul ass. And so everybody rucks up, and the lads are all like, we can do this. I said, we're going to show them we can do this. And I tell them on the bounce, and they're like, hoo-yah, and we just haul ass. And the evaluator's running with it. Now, he has minimal to no pack because he doesn't have to carry anything, and he can't keep up. And we cut across. By 06, we're at it's called poos, which are these big, like they stick out of the ground. It looks like a big, huge kind of mountain, a tooth almost. That's how straight up it is. The enemy's on the objective, but they're looking for the most likely avenue of approach.
Most likely, yeah.
But we come around through what is a no-go area and set up in peace, and then we roop them up. That wins the McCree, great event. Come back and blah, blah, blah. Everyone gets a pat on the back, the whole yards, do a gear equipment amount accountability. Everybody's got all your weapons, equipment, NVGs, all the important stuff. And get chow, helicopters pick us up, fly us back. I have a young corporal who misplaces his NVGs.
Never fails.
And then I have to send him and his staff sergeant, who was a great guy, Staff Sergeant McGovern, back to the airfield and fly back over and find it. And they can't because he had left it on a helicopter. And my first sergeant, McIntosh, calls he was a crew chief, he calls over there, they find it, but I'm in no comm with him because he's on a helicopter flying over. They come back, he gets a bit physical with the corporal because the corporal mouthed off to him. I see the corporal the next Monday because we get a 96 and the corporal's got a black eye, and I'm like, what happened to you? I said, we do fighting all the time. What's going on? He said, oh, sir, I got in a bar fight, blah, blah, blah. Well, he didn't tell me. My first sergeant didn't tell me. The staff sergeant didn't tell me, which goes back to bad news never gets good with age.
No, it does not.
Yeah.
And if the first sergeant told me right then, or the staff sergeant told me right then, I could have solved the problem. That Tuesday, I got called down to see the regimental commander with Colonel Garrett, my battalion commander, and he says, Mike, you're relieved. Lose my command. I wasn't there, but I'm responsible for what my command does or fails to do. I get put in the 3-shot. I'm the 3 Alpha. I work for a guy named J.J. Patterson, who's a phenomenal leader. He had recommended me for the Left Wrist Trophy, which is the best infantry officer, company commander. But because of that, I lost my command. I can't get that. I do a stint in the 3-shot. We go to Okinawa. I put a whole training package together. It's a MUSOC training package, and we're getting them ready. We're doing amphibraids, boats, the whole 9 yards. One night, General Krulak bounces into us while I'm sitting on a bridge watching an amphibraid come in. I get to talk to him. I get to see then Colonel Zinni, great leader, goes on to become a 4-star CENTCOM commander. He says, hey, Mike, he says, you're a great guy, because he had talked to John Garrett, and he said, ride it, just ride it out, do the best you can, and your time will come. So we end up going to Cobra Gold and do all that. Great operations.
Thailand.
Yeah, Thailand. Yep. We do the biggest amphibious helicopter operation into the jungle that they have ever done in the time period. My liaison officer is the Thai Commandant of Marine Corps' son. And he takes me up to then Kampuchea, which is Cambodia,
yep.
in the border, and shows me where his first kill is, and walks me through the process and how they go through and what transpired, and I get to see all that.
Yeah, in the late 80s, you're not too far removed from the killing fields at that point.
Exactly right. Yeah, and they're looked at it. It's a nationalist terrorist compensation piece. I get to now interact with the Thais. I get to go to his wedding with the Thai coming in this huge place, and we get to eat all this god-awful food, but we get to see a full-blown traditional Thai wedding with the girls with the ching 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 and the pointy hats, and it's phenomenal, and lots of scotch and blah blah blah. Blah.
So much scotch.
Yes, they love it. But I mean, the only civilian clothes I have is the two, like a shirt like this and a pair of khakis, whatever, that we carried in our rucks.
Yeah.
So there's like 5 of us: Colonel Garrett, Lieutenant Colonel Holliston, and then J.J. Patterson, Leon Pepper, myself. We get to go because the other guys are off doing stuff. So that was a great experience. And then right at the end of that, we're about to come back, and Saddam invades Kuwait.
So I want to talk about Desert Storm. Let's take a quick break.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that,
Cool.
good to go.
All right. Saddam's invaded Kuwait.
Yeah, so we were in Okinawa. Saddam invades. Colonel Garrett comes to me and says, okay, Mike, he says, I'm giving you a company back. I want you to take Indian company. We're going to go home. You're going to literally turn around in less than 24 hours and go to KSA, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as part of the Advanced Force Structure for 3rd Marines. Colonel Admire, General Admire is Colonel Admire is regimental commander. Colonel Garrett's my battalion commander, and I get back. My gunner sergeant just leaves. I've got a first sergeant who's with me, who's an admin guy, but it's about first sergeant, 999, so he's not an infantry guy. So I'm now getting my trash together. My wife has been gone because she went stateside in the process, and so she calls and said, hey, I'll fly. I said, nope, just stay home. I'm turning around right in less than 24 hours. Colonel Councilman's the MEF, the MEB G2, so he's going to be my boss.
The MEB being? The
Marine Expeditionary Brigade out of Hawaii. We are a separate MEB, standalone. We have all our assets over there. So we then get ready to deploy in less than 24 hours. I then get a new gunner sergeant. My sergeant major at the time was Sergeant Major Pippin for the command, and I'm in my office kind of just putzing around getting stuff together, and in comes Sergeant Major says, okay, I got your new company gunner sergeant. And I'm like, it's about time. I turn around and it's Mark Carrington, who was the young platoon sergeant
Yep.
with Lieutenant Wilson at the time. And I'm like, Mad Mark, big hug. And he's like, Mad Mike. And I'm like, okay, I'm good. I got a great senior staff NCO. I said, I don't know about the first sergeant, but I know him. I know Carrington, and Carrington is a badass. He is the Heartbreak Ridge, Clint Eastwood guy.
He's Gunny Highway.
He's Gunny Highway. He is went to USC, stud, tall guy, sandy colored hair, great leadership, does it all. And I said, okay, Mark, I said, we got 24 hours to get the lads ready and then get out of town. We're going to fly, get over to Singapore at the time. And we were supposed to get into Singapore and then get off the harbor before we get discovered, because Singapore didn't want anyone to know that we were being supported by them. So I get Tim Mundy, who General Mundy's son, who's my XO, Ivan Ray, who's my FSO, Fire Support Officer, and I got a small crew of great kids who are my radio operators and that type of thing, and 3 great platoon commanders and staff NCOs. So we fly out, get on board trucks.
What kind of aircraft?
This is a civilian aircraft at the time.
So it's a chartered.
Chartered.
Yeah.
And we get all our kit. And Councilman is my direct boss, and he reports back to then the MEB, and then really to the MEF, one MEF, and that's General Myatt at the time. And so we land, cross deck. We're getting on the MPS run ships, Bobo, Button, Loomis, and I forget the other one. And these are what all of our Marine Corps equipment's on. It's in the ships, stocked and tight, A to B, and that's what we offload by row when we get to a port somewhere in a passive environment, and then that goes to combat. And that's what the MPS run ship architecture is all about. But it takes a while, and we're getting guys onto the different ships, and we don't get all the ammo, so all the ammo goes on my ship. And then when we get out to Seeker, we had to get out of the port before it became light. So boom, we get out, and then we're doing cross-decking of ammo and the whole yards and moving troops and everything. And they're not made to hold Marines like we are. We're a company plus. I got a fast platoon with me. I got snipers. I got a whole kit of guys with me for this. And there's no really living quarters for us, so we got guys sleeping in their lounge areas, and we're sleeping on mats and stuff like that. And I got each one of my officers and some staff NCOs on each of the different ships, so we're spread load. And the ship's captains are all Mass Maritime guys, and they're all Boston boys and the whole 9 yards, New England. And I said, okay, Skipper, I said, we're going to deck mount heavy weapon systems on all your guardrails. I said, because we've got fast attack ships that are coming after your boats, the whole 9 yards, we're about to go in harm's way. And that had never been done before. So he said, well, let me talk to the head welder guy, the chief bosun's mate type guy. And he says, okay, we can do that. I said, remember World War II, you had that big plate you'd see the guns behind? I said, I want those made. Here's a pintle for my 50 cal and Mark 19s. I want to be able to fit all around the ship with all these on all the 4 ships. And then once we get them made, we're going to test them. We're going to fire weapon systems, and we're going to go. So we do all that, and they do it within 24 hours. And
nice.
We put it all together, and they're one thing about those ships. There's great food. The food is phenomenal. I mean, they got steaks and lobsters and all that kind of good stuff. So we're eating great. We're PTing whatever we can on a very, very tight, cram-packed ship. And then we get all the guns mounted, and the lads get in there and start banging it. And because you throw a big bag of trash out, and that's your target, and then you rip it up. And then the chief, because he says, hey, sir, do we get to fire? Can we fire some? I'm like, well, of course you can. I said,
I'm glad you asked.
Yeah, I said, because your guys can do that. Because if we start to get boarded, I said, my lads are going after them, and you guys are providing support. And again, a bunch of Boston boys are in there, and they're banging it and having a great time. And they're like big guys and all that, and they're loving the heck out of it, and you're in heavy weapon systems and having a great time. We get into El Jabal, which is the port. BSSG 7 is there. There's a CSSD guy or FSSG guy there from Pendleton. and we're going to take over the port because 7th Marines was there, and then they're going out. And then we come in, and we're going to take it over, provide security, and then get ready to go out into the desert to start moving forward. So we get there, and we're living in these huge, huge hangars. I mean, and it's like hundreds of us, and they're just massive. And it's 100-degree weather, and you're outside on the port, all concrete, and there's no respite from the heat. So during the day, you're trying just to stay cool, and we're sleeping on cots, and you get the bug netting, and you're just trying to, you're wearing your PT gear all day long because you're just completely soaked. And, and then you're moving around with guys on patrol and guys doing bunkers. And I go to the first meeting with the handover with the PSG 7 guy, and Colonel Councilman's with me. And he's an intel guy, a Force Recon guy, so he's a badass. And the guy says, well, I said, what's the rules of engagement with my history? And he says, well, you will only fire if you're fired upon. I said, no, bullshit. I said, I lived that life. I said, I will never do that again. I will never have what happened to us in Beirut. And he's like, but this time I'm a captain, you know, and I'm a little bit more senior because I've, again, been through the process. And the guy starts to like say, excuse me, Captain, and Councilman's behind me. I says, nope, what he said. Because Councilman's like a big guy, big tall guy. And so then, because I said, hey, we could have divers, we could have all these types of things, people at the wire. I said, we're not going to have what we had in Beirut in the process. So that gets cleaned up, and we're good to go. And then you're going to go to the desert. And when you go in the desert, you got to build fighting positions. And what do you have to keep your walls right? You have nothing. So I tell the gunny, hey, go get me some vehicles and go get us some dunnage, which is wood from pallets. And
crates and pallets and all that stuff.
So him and Lance Corporal Spinks go out, and a company rates like maybe 2 Humvee Jeeps at the time. He comes back with like 3 trucks and 4 Jeeps, and they're or Humvees at the time, and they are just completely jam-packed with dunnage. I mean, all over the place.
Looks like Road Warrior.
Yeah, exactly. Looks just like Road Warrior. Exact thing. So I'm like, great job. Okay, guys, get some chow, whatever. And we had been there for about a week, and one day I'm in the big area, and I'm literally sound asleep because you just
worn out.
From the heat. And the next thing I know, I feel someone kicking my rack, which is the fold-up cot. And I look up, and there's my XO, Major Huddleston, who's a phenomenal. He used to be IOC chief. I mean, just the smartest guy there is in tactics and warfare and all that. He's like, hey, Mike, what the heck you doing? I'm like, hey, sure. And so I get up, and we give him, okay, here's what's going on. Here's what the situation is. Here's where we are. I said, I need to talk to the battalion commander. I said, we need to get dunnage. I said, because we're going to go out there and we're going to have nothing, and that's the biggest thing we're going to have. And so Garrett said, okay. So with all the stuff coming off the ships, they come off the ship, they get checked, make sure everything's put together, oil, all the gas, all the thing they put on, whatever it is that you're getting off there. We line it all up, and then off we go into the desert. And it's just like Road Warrior. Now you have Amtraks and trucks and 5 tons and everything, and everybody's got all the rucks on the outside and then dunnage all over the place. Yeah. So we just look like a clown circus. But,
well, it sounds like you employed one of the number 1 rules, ironclad as a leader, and that is you never ask where the stuff came from.
Nope,
ever.
That's it. And the gunny is like, great, go get it, and we're good to go. And so off we go, and we end up just moving, and everywhere we stop, we're setting up defensive positions. We go to a place called Concrete Hill, which is out in KSA, moving towards Kuwait, and we set up a full-blown defensive fighting position. But because you're in KSA, we couldn't fire pre-registry weapon systems, couldn't fire test FPF, couldn't fire any of that, which is your final protective fires, mortars, artillery, etc., because we're in the desert. But we're doing all this training and everything. And one day when we stopped there, I said, okay, first, then second, blah, blah, put them all out, do the whole position, and then we start patrolling. And I tell the gunny and my lance corporal, who's my what do you call it?
Like an RTO or a...
Well, he's a radio operator, but he's also a guy who can find you anything. I mean,
a gopher.
Your gopher.
He's your gopher. I said, go
Go for this.
Go for get us something. Next thing I know, he's somehow bumped into some U.S. expats over there, and he comes back with a big jug of moonshine. And I'm like, now, remember, Schwarzkopf put in John Order number 1. This was the first time that's...
First, yep.
So I said, okay, guys, as much as I love you have this, we can't have it. So what we're going to do is I'll give everybody a small cup. Everybody gets a drink, and we're good to go. And then we're doing nothing every day, every night is digging fighting positions, building bunkers, and then patrolling all night long. Small squad, team, platoon, long range patrols, and I got the boys just patrolling all night long. We'd go out at dusk and just keep on building distance, and come back in by early morning, and then we'd start doing helicopter raids. One of the raids, we did a helicopter raid, all training now, getting ready. A buddy of mine, Joyce, then Captain Joyce, helicopter pilot, I come on, and he's a Norwich boy, and we're both, hey, how are you? And so that Norwich family that I met as a young kid in college now follows me all the way through in the Marine Corps, and there's numerous places I bump into a Norwich student or cadet who was then with us, and we do anything for each other to go from there. As we're moving forward, just before the operation kicks off into Desert Storm, our mission we're given is to do the helicopter-borne raid into Kuwait City. And we just said, okay, his artillery and anti-air capability is phenomenal. There's 70% death rate for that one. And we're literally, with all, like Eric, we're giving each other all of our mail to give back to your family. Whoever makes it, give this to my wife.
Your last letter.
Last letter in the process. By the grace of God, someone said, okay, we're not going to do this. But then they say, okay, we're Task Force Terror at the time, and we are the lead of Task Force Terror, and I'm now the lead company commander in Task Force Terror. And Colonel Garrett says, okay, Mike, lead us out in the desert. We go at D-3, and we now infiltrate into Kuwait before the D-Day kicks off. And we go into the first mine belt, and we're literally on our hands and knees going through
the old mine probing.
Exactly right.
Oh, man.
Because my engineers, I didn't have them up front with us, so
The flails and all that are, yeah.
Yeah, and so we're Task Force Terror. Task Force Papa Bear is on our left, and they're mech, and so they're going to come through. But we have to get through so we can protect their flank while they come up and blow through with Miklix and all that. And prior to, we had done Al Mashab when we had the whole incident inside there, and our guys were there and had to go in and help the Saudis, the Qataris, do that. And that was Killer Joe Molosky, who was one of our company commanders, who was attached to them, and they fought in Al Mashab when the Iraqis came in there, and then we got hit by Scuds. And one time we had to go through, what's the drill? If you have to check to see if it's clean, you got to do a demask. Well, your demask is, okay, you're the youngest guy, you don't have a wife, sit down, give me your weapon. You're the canary in the
break the seal.
Break the seal.
The canary. That's Task Force Canary. You.
Yeah, all right. And so I have Lance Corporal Spinks, who says, "Hey, sir, don't worry about it. I'll do this." So he volunteers, knowing that this could kill him. I have Doc Collier with the atropine, and I'll stand right there, and he sits down, and that's bravery right there. That's a young Lance Corporal who shows ultimate bravery, and does that. And so we go through the process because we had spots on our tape, and we were hit by Scuds and all that kind of stuff. And Dale Lambar, who was at the Three Shop, literally just connected with me a few days ago and said, Mike, I think what happened was we had simultaneously hit one of their chemical sites or whatever, and it was in the air.
The drift.
And the drift got us. And so he does the whole thing. Luckily, we're good. And we have been living bunkers to bunkers to bunkers and building all this stuff. And we get through that whole thing. And then that Christmas time, we had moved up, and Leon Papa has the other company, and we got bulldozers coming up, digging positions, and we're getting them all set. And we're getting lighter and lighter and lighter as we get to the front. And so then a funny story is my father, who is he's been divorced for a while, and he sends me Marine Corps birthday cake. And my father can't cook for shit. So I know something's amiss here. So I get this big piece of cardboard with what looks like a big, huge cake, like loaf of bread covered with frosting. And because it's gone through all the mail, all the frosting is just a mess. And blah, blah, blah. But I said, okay, this is not right. So, and I carry a Sykes Fairbank Commando knife given to me by my lads. And so I cut off the plastic and I do probe, 45-degree angle, boom, boom. Pink, it hit something, cut the top off, and my father has sent me a bottle of Irish whiskey in the Listerine bottle, plastic, because it doesn't go through the piece. So everybody gets a shot for Marine Corps birthday, and I have enough for Christmas, and everyone gets a small shot for Christmas. And then my family had sent me about $500 worth of Christmas stuff that you couldn't get there. Eggnog, sausage, because you couldn't have pork.
You couldn't find that in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia?
No, we were in the desert, so you couldn't get any of that trash. And then we confiscate some eggs, and I cooked breakfast for my CP, and we've got little Christmas trees. And my sister was a teacher at the time in New Hampshire or Salem, and her 6th grade sends me all the the ribbons you make.
The links.
The links.
Yeah.
So they send me a whole slew of them. We go out in the desert, pull this huge bush and make it a Christmas tree. We have candles coming in, for Christmas.
You have to send us a picture if you've got one.
I've got that. I've got all the pictures of Tim Mundy, myself, Gunny Carrington, and Ivan Ray, my FSO, on Christmas Day with eggnog, can of eggnog, and just it was a great. If you have to be away, it was a great way to spend Christmas, with the lads. So.
From the time you were in Okinawa and Saddam invaded, you did your quick 24-hour turnaround to pick up your company. How quick was it from Saddam's actual invasion to you and your company are boots on the ground in Saudi?
I think it's less than 2 weeks.
Okay.
We're gone.
And then from the time you hit the ground in Saudi Arabia, continually pushing forward with your dunnage bunkers, how long before you were boots on the ground in Iraq?
That was I think it was February. I think January, February 15th. I think is off the top of my head. I think is when D-Day for Desert Storm kicks off. So we're almost there for 6 more months. Where we're doing nothing but training.
And continually pushing forward.
Always moving forward.
How close at the final before kickoff, at the final line, how close were you to the border?
We're right there. We're standing right there. So our last fighting position before we crossed the border was less than 1,000 yards. The border had become a big, huge berm. They burned it up, I think, like right in the very beginning.
They being the coalition forces or
coalition Saudis.
Okay.
And so they had to cut it, probably as big as your house, a 2-story house. They had to cut a hole through the berm, and then we just hayakoed on foot, and we had 75 to 100 pounds on our back. My whole company, we did Ranger Desert File, and that's what I've been training them to do. We're going to do desert ground patrol operations and vehicle patrol. I got to be SAS Rat Patrol driver in the desert.
Nice.
Windshields down, stuff on your front lights, the whole 9 yards. The CEO said, "Okay, Mike, that's real cool, but I'll put it back together again."
Yeah.
But
during your months-long push towards the border, I mean, you guys were out in the middle of the desert training and digging fighting positions.
Yep.
What were some of the challenges that you faced? Like, I guess keeping the guys motivated, keeping their attention focused on the mission at hand, because monotony gets to everybody.
It's a killer.
It is.
Yeah.
And monotony is one of the worst things that can happen to a fighting force in theater.
Yeah.
And if that's all you're doing is training and slowly moving forward and just making bunkers, or fighting positions again and again.
Apathy's a killer.
Yes.
Yeah. So the biggest thing we did continuous training, and that's a lot of PT, a lot of training. I'd constantly talk to the boys all the time, and we, school circle when we talk about it. For Christmas time, General Monday came over. Again, his son was my XO, so he got to spend time with us. He was 2nd Marine Division at the time. We're now attached to 1 MEF. He goes and gets his in-brief from 1 MEF and all, okay, so this is blah, 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 blah. He comes back to us because I put up a small CP tent for him and his son to stay for Christmas and have Christmas together. And he's a great man. And his son, Tim, was a great officer. He then comes to us and I said, "Sir, would you talk to the lads?" He said, "Definitely." So school circle, he comes up and he says, and this is a great officer, says, "Okay, guys, I just got all the conversation with everyone. Now I want you to tell me what no one else will tell me. Tell me what's the real truth of what's going on." I told the lads, I said, "Be professional, but tell them the truth. Tell them everything. Tell them the problems you're having." And so, we didn't have gas masks, we didn't have mop suits. And we're going to a place which uses nerve gas.
Yeah, they use chemical agents on their own people. So
there was a precedent for that.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah. And then we talk about logistics and water.
Always.
Constantly. And so we're using these desert bags that now 20 Palms, you get them all the time, but back then we didn't have a lot of that. And just patrolling skills and what's it like to live in the desert forever. And so we walk the dog and all that, and all this stuff, all the wood and all that we had to get. So he's like, "I never thought about that." And so those types of things, Haskell Bastions come into play, the whole one. There wasn't any of that type of stuff back then. So we do all that, and then we have Marine Corps birthday, and Marine Corps, no matter where you are on Marine Corps birthday, you will have a celebration. And so we do the cake cutting, and we put the cake on a cot, and we walk the cot out and cut the cake, and I oldest, youngest of the whole 9 yards. And the biggest thing, what was become the hardest piece is, we had a Coleman who lost it because just got fear, because this is the first time some guy's going to combat.
Yeah.
But I had
this is the early 90s now, so the vast majority of your Vietnam vets are gone.
Pretty much gone.
And so, you'll have some guys with some limited experience, like you and your time in Lebanon and whatnot, but the vast majority of your experienced NCOs and officers are gone. From even the battalion level down. Those guys aren't really there anymore.
Yeah.
So,
and it's funny, if you do a lot of reading and some conversations, people said they got, like you said, bored. I made it that we were constantly going, constantly training, and that's what kept everybody on track.
Mm-hmm. No time for boredom because you didn't have any time to sit around?
Yeah, it was always just go, go, go. And then I get in the habit of at night when we had some downtown quiet time, if we weren't patrolling, and I got in the habit of making a peach cobbler out of, get a can of peaches, use all the cream out of your MREs, break up the cookies, add that to it, put it over a fire stove, type of thing, and I'd give that to the lads, all my radio watches and all that stuff. And so it got to the point where my squad leader was like, "I need to go to the CP and see the captain about something," and so they could get some of the peach cobbler stuff. But we used to listen to Colonel Neal, then General Neal, on the radio, and he had been the director of AWS when I was a young captain.
AWS is
Amphibious Warfare School. So we listened to that at night and learned what's going on, because you knew what was around you. You had an inkling of what was the bigger picture, but you never had a true picture of how big and how massive, and the right hook and the whole 9 yards, left hook in this whole process. So we didn't have phones. We had Mars. If you could get Mars station, you could do that if you had to talk to somebody. But I wrote letters every day. Every letter was numbered, and I had a code in my wife then of where I was, because you couldn't disclose any of that stuff.
Right.
And then she had the same thing. She'd have every letter was numbered, and you just look for mail every day, because you didn't have a phone and you could talk to your wife anytime you wanted, type of thing. So,
speaking on the family portion, you had been married for how long at this point?
I got married in '83. So this is now 91.
So just under a decade. And then your daughter was born when you were in Paris Island. So she's 4 or 5?
4 or 5,
Yeah.
And Daddy's now been gone for. She left before went to Okinawa, gone through Okinawa, and now gone there. So it's over a year plus that I've been gone. And you know, you hear it nowadays when you talk any of the wives, they're glued to the TV.
Yeah.
All they're doing every day is watching. Am I going to see them? Am I going to know what's going on? Luckily, my ex, her father was a full bird colonel, and he was in 3rd Shrig Surveillance Reconnaissance Intelligence Group in Okinawa. So he would get word back to her of kind of where we were and what was going on. But they were in Maryland.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy for people to think about now, but it wasn't that long ago that we didn't have internet. You couldn't do a Zoom or a Skype or a FaceTime call, you know, all the way across the world to the, you know, the dial of a phone. You had to write letters or watch the news, or if you were lucky, you could, you know, plug into your husband, son, daughter's unit and maybe get some information.
Well, it's also different too, because we were fighting a counterinsurgency fight. So that means we were generally in static positions.
Yeah.
Going out on patrols versus what you're talking about, which is a penetration very, very, very deep into an area. So, I mean, your position's different almost every day.
Every day.
So
you're moving. So we'd stay for like 2 weeks and then move forward. Build again. Move forward, build again. All the training we did kept everybody in top shape and physically and mentally. And then we infilled and Gunny Carrington, we were like on day 2, and it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and as we're moving forward, because we'd move at night, before the sun come up in the morning, we'd stop, everybody would then hunker down, dig in, take a fighting position, cover themselves over with a poncho or whatever, camouflage in. We'd set the basic Ranger triangle and, you know, and wait for the sun to go down and get up and go again. We got hit by our own air, blew up. There were trucks, like 3-4 companies back, that had some level of ammo resupply. They got hit by AMRAAM, so we lost, I think, 2 kids in that one. And we thought we were gone. We thought the Iraqis got hold of us in the process.
But it was blue on blue.
Blue on blue. And so then we get up and we stop that night, and up comes Company Gunny, Mark Carrington, and again, this guy's the epitome of a stud. He's got his ruck, which is 75 pounds plus. Then he's got the tow sight, which is not the sight, the laser rangefinder, which is this big god-awful thing back then.
that was before the glid.
Yeah, and then he's got the other guy's ruck. So now he's carrying at least 200 pounds with 2 rucks, plus this thing, which is at least 75 pounds. And I'm like, what are you doing? So we got this new engineer guy or whatever, heavy weapons guy, and he wasn't with us when we trained, and so he couldn't hack the movement. So I had to take his crap. I said, okay, give the ruck to someone else, give that to someone else. I said, and then you just relax. Stop trying to do it all.
Go sit down.
Go sit down. And I'm, you know, the basic, you got the poncho on, and we had just got GPSs. Remember, they were like this big.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
First gen.
Yeah.
And I didn't trust the shit out of it. So I mean, I still have my maps and everything, and I'm plotting along and doing pace count and all the whole 9 yards, and we're figuring out where we are. And again, the desert, nothing's but flat, and you're trying to figure out where you are on the process. Yeah. And so we do that, and off we go again the next morning. We get to just about 2,000 yards off of the first mine belt, and remember, his tactics and techniques was this massive mine belt, fire pit, mines, personal mines, tank mines, and it was massive. And then he had it all covered by fields of fire and the whole 9 yards. So when you went into it, you were caught in a dead zone, and that was it. So I got Sergeant Imes, Billy Imes, recon team leader from Alpha Company 3rd in Hawaii, and his guys, Corporal Knies and just great studs. And they were in Kafji when Kafji happened. They were the recon team. So he comes back, we link up, he says, okay, sir, it's just over the rise, and you can see the barbed wire. You can make out some stuff, but it's pitch black, because remember, he has set all the oil fields on fire. So even in daytime, it's black. It's night. So Leon, it's a company behind me. Leon comes up. I said, okay, Leon, me, Sergeant Imes, and Corporal Knies, we're going to go forward, and we're going to cut the barbed wire, and then we'll infill, and figure it out. And all I can remember is Wild E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, and when they cut the barbed wire, you hear this boing, and so I'm like, okay, we're at the barbed wire line on the ground. I'm like, hold that side, and I'll hold this side, and then I think Knies cut it, or Billy Arms cut it. Okay, I'll hold tight, God, and I, instead of putting the barb here, I mistakenly put the barb here.
So it just slides. Yeah.
So he goes, clip, and what do I hear? Boing! And we're like...
But it doesn't take your hand with you, at least.
No, it just goes, but you hear all this wire go, and then Leon has this side, and he's got it right, and so but then we're all like, laughing. It's a stressful thing. And then we get through, and you can see some of the mines on top of the sand, and some uncovered, and we check all the positions. And at this point in time, we're lucky that we find there's no one there in the process, but we're like, you're in a combat kill zone. So we get through. Engineers come up, start marking. We mark chem lights as we go. Everything that's in mine, we mark them with chem lights, because we're literally, on our bellies doing that. Get to the other side. Engineers come up. I send my company through, go this way. Leon's company through goes that way. Engineers start blowing all the mines that we're trying to make the path, and the next thing you know, Leon starts taking fire on the far side. So we're now in this big firefight, and he's going at it. And Colonel Garrett comes up with the tow vehicles, because Leon doesn't have any vehicles, and all he's got is Dragons, which is an anti-tank.
It's the wire-guided
missile. And so now we got to drive a vehicle through this, and this is the first vehicle. So Garrett, being the leader that he is, says, okay, I'm driving. So he jumps in the front seat. I said, okay, sir, I'm going to sit on the hood of your truck, and I'm going to do left, right as we make our way through. And while we're doing this, the engineer guys are blowing all the mines on the peripheries as we're going through. We get through. They go this way, and then they start engaging tanks and all that. And then once we consolidate, then the sun comes up the next morning, and we're in fighting positions again, now on the far side of the minefield.
But everybody's on the far side now.
Yeah. Now we are.
You have that foothold now.
Yeah,
okay.
We have a foothold, and then Task Force Papa Bear comes up on our left, and they fire Micklicks.
Yep.
And you see it, and it's really cool. And then they come through, and we're like, see you later, we've been here, where you been?
It's our,
yeah, and so
thanks for showing up.
They take off and do their thing, and then the rest of our battalion, because we had led all the way through this, so Colonel Garrett says, okay, Mike, you guys are done for now. You got the rear. We're going to go forward to, I think it was Kuwait Airport, and so they keep on moving, and we hold the rear. And again, it's nighttime. It's daytime, but it's nighttime, and
because of all the smoke and everything.
Smoke. I mean, you are covered in. We're in mop. We're in full mop the whole time.
That's miserable.
Yeah. So we've been in full mop this whole piece, and we're covered in soot. And I got a picture I think I sent you guys, which is, I'm literally look black and covered with this trash, and so we're settled in, and as the sun supposedly comes up the next morning, you can see a bit of that, and the next thing we know, we have 2 BMPs coming towards us, and we get into it with that, and I got a Sergeant Imes, Billy was up with us, and we end up taking prisoners. We take them, and we end up taking them back to what was the first holding compound that was being run by one of the BSSGs. I get to ride a tank, ride a BMP.
So these a pair of BMPs, this deep into the fight. Were these combatants who were on a suicide mission, or was this because at some point there's token resistance from much of the Iraqi once the revolutionary, or excuse me, the Republican Guard, once those guys are taken care of, there's very token resistance in some areas. Is that what we're dealing with at this point?
I think it's a combination of both, because we end up putting some rounds downrange, but they put their hands up, and we take them all prisoner in the process. I don't lose anybody in the process, and then we just take the vehicles and them, and we move them back in the process, and then from there we finally link back up with our parent battalion, and then it's over, and it's like 3 or 4 days worth of gunfight that's going on all over the place, and then and we have the highway to hell. We rip the heck out of them by aircraft and all that.
That's what A-10s were designed for.
Exactly right. Yep. That's a great weapon system. And there are times I'm calling air and using what is the FAC airborne, and his name is Chieftain. That's his call sign. And I'm talking to Chieftain. Hey, Chieftain, this is, I'm Task Force Terror. My call sign was Casca, the Ultimate Warrior, the Roman legion who stabbed Jesus and then lives forever as a warrior until he ever meets Jesus again. And so that's my call sign, and I'm talking to him, I said, and coordinating air and stuff and the whole nine yards. So it was it's what every company commander, every infantry company commander wants to do in life, and is lead his company in battle. So.
You have a good fire support officer?
Great. Yep. Ivan Ray. Ivan was what's that song? All My Friends in Low Places. Ivan, that was like his theme song, and Ivan wanted to go join the Foreign Legion after this. And he was a great guy, had a dry sense of humor, but great FSO. And he is now a senior executive officer for the Department of State. Is the security guy for PACOM Mayor. So, but just a great guy. And then I got a FAC, and just got the FACs would switch out. And just before we crossed over, I'm in a fighting position. This new aviator comes in. He's a big guy. He says, "Hey, I'm Joe FAC." I said, "Yeah, you're my FAC. What's your name?" "Yeah, Joe FAC." I said, "No, what's your name?"
Who's on first?
Joe FAC. Yeah, Joe FAC. I said, "Okay, your name is FAC." "Yes, sir, my name is FAC." I said, "Okay, I got it. I thought you were pulling, who's on first trick on me." And this was his first tour as a FAC, and he did a great job. So it was good to go. So, and I had Sergeant Athey, who was my weapons platoon sergeant, and we all each of us carried at least 4 or 5 mortars ourselves. And every time we stopped, you'd go and jump the mortar off and the whole 9 yards. And we had mortars and extra ammo, extra grenades, laws, all that. We carried it all, and the lads were phenomenal. I mean,
you're carrying 60s.
We're carrying everything. 60s. I had 81s were back with the 81s platoon. We have 60s, and then we get 240 Golfs and all our light weapon systems. We get some guys with some Dragons, and then all of our stuff. And you're 125 pounds with mop and extra mop suit and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, it's miserable. Oof.
Yep, and then you just go. But Indian Company 33 was my company.
So the war ends very precipitously.
Yep.
So it's done.
So we
finished. But we don't get to just go home, smoke on the objective and go home. Not yet.
No. So we have to wait, and then since we were the first in, we get to be the first out. But we got to drive literally across the desert to get back so we can get out of the airport. And back then, you're an officer, you don't drive, you get a radio driver or whatever. So my radio operator in all that, Sergeant, God, I just went blank, but a great kid. And I said, "Okay, you're not driving, I'm driving. You just go to sleep while I drive." And so off we go in the desert and drive home. Get to the airport, fly back.
You're in Riyadh?
Yeah, Riyadh.
Okay.
And then we stop in Ireland for
Shannon.
a changeover in Shannon. We get to go in and have one beer and have Guinness, and then get back on, and all the flight attendants and all that was commercial air, and they were all great, and it was a great time. And then get back to Hawaii, and my wife and daughter had flown over because it's now been over a year plus, and I get to see them from there. So, and then I then have the opportunity to then go work for I pick up Alpha Company, 3rd Reconnaissance. I work for the best reconnaissance officer there is, then Colonel Wayne Rollins, Navy Cross winner, Vietnam guy. And I get to be his separate reconnaissance company commander. And I take that company, and they've been to war too, so they're all squared away kids who've been through a lot. And then we get back into, regular training again in the process, infantry training and doing the whole yards. I do a lot of work with LRSD over in 25th Light and that type of thing.
LRSD being
long range surveillance.
Long range surveillance
detachment. Yeah.
So there are deep reconnaissance operations, just like we are amphibious. We're amphibious. They are long range ground reconnaissance stuff. So they can do what we used to call stingray or keyhole missions. Stingray being fire support operations, target strikes, or reconnaissance, keyhole, that type of thing. So we just do a lot of training together in the jungles of Hawaii. So
25th ID Infantry Division. So when do you go to military free fall or whatever the Marine Corps equivalent is?
Out there, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I go to Fort Bragg, and I go to the one here and do that. And while I was a commanding officer there, and I go to Jump Master because I have a full dive locker, full paraloft. I have my line yards as part of the company.
So it's static line or free fall?
Free fall.
Okay.
Yeah. And then go from there. After that, I do 2 years or so with them, but we do some counter-drug operations, go down the border, and we do that as full-blown operations.
Doing what?
So we're literally putting reconnaissance operations on the border, helping the border patrol to catch guys coming
just
across.
tracking movement,
Yep.
going both ways.
Yep. Yeah. And we see something and then identify it to the border patrol guys who are there.
They handle it.
And then they're supposed to go in and attack it. And then
Specifically for drug trafficking.
drug trafficking, yeah, big thing. The Marine Corps was doing a lot of that until we had the incident where the Marines, the kid was shooting at one of the Marines' positions and they shot him and the whole 9 yards. And that stopped for a time period. I don't think it's ever gone back again to where it was in the process. So, but still did a lot of coalition units who came to Hawaii and trained. We trained with them. We did, again, Commander Jabeur came again. I linked back up with those guys, did some more work with them. And then that time finished, and then it was off to the next duty station. And I ended up going to FSSG, and I became an 0402, or logistics officer. And I got to work. I was initially the duty grunt, and normally in the 3 shop, they had a combat skills course that they ran all the logistics kids, engineers, electricians, all that stuff to keep them current in that process. And they had Camp Lejeune, FSG has a compound they had built with obstacle courses and leadership courses and that type of stuff. The thing you have to carry the weight and carry the ammo box and get over the fences and walls and all that stuff in water, and then combat skills, shooting, all that kind of stuff, patrolling. So I was doing that, and the chief of staff was a friend of the family's, and he said, "Okay, Mike," he said, "you're a great infantry officer, but now you need to become a professional, so you got to be a logistics officer." So he said, "You're going to go work for Bob Ruark, who was a friend of mine. We went to school together at AWS." He said, "You'll be his CSSD OPSO." So I do about 6 to 8 months, and I learn logistics. I mean, we all know some level of logistics, but not to the fact of what you really
The minutia.
Yeah, the detail of horizontal road construction, FARPs, ROPUs, all.
It's a science.
It is, and it's if you can be a great logistician, then you can fight an army. And I learned that extensively from Bob. Great guy. He went on to become a 3-star. He was the Joint Staff J4. He's now the president of Navy Marine Corps Relief Society. Great guy, great leader. And the most dirty words Bob ever says is "Jeezy peasy." That's about it. Just a consummate professional, but a great guy. And he puts up with me, and I forget the XO's name, but him and I are both like knucklehead Irishmen who swear like, drunken sailors and that type of thing. And he just puts up with us. So, but we had a great time, and I had all the lads and the gals, and get in there and do some good fighting and shooting, and I got them to be able to go up the corridor at 29 Palms, which is our CAX, Combined Arms Exercise, and I went and was talking to then Lieutenant Colonel Greenwood. He was the XO of, I think it was the XO at the time of the regiment, and I said, "Hey, sir, I want to make sure the CSSD gets its combat time and training in live fire, CAS, SIF, heavy weapon systems, convoy operations." And he's like, "Okay, Mike, sure." I said, "You can do that, but to do that, I want you to make sure that I have a bowl of ice cream on the end of CAX, the last day." And so I said, "Okay, no problem." So I go back and tell Bob, and I tell the guys and the gals, and they're like, "Okay, we got this." So you remember when ice cream comes to those big brown, like...
The tubs, the big tubs.
Yeah, sure.
So we get one of those, and we keep it on dry ice for the whole CAX. And at 06, the last day, they're in a mobile CP. I got the tub, and I come up, I flip open the door, and the light's just coming from, beginning of nautical twilight. Flip it open. I said, "Hey, sir, here's your ice. We're going live in 10 minutes. And I had talked to range control, and we had it all set up and ready to go. And he's like, "What?" I said, "Thank you very much." And the lads hit the corridor and it ripped it up.
Boom.
And it was like, they loved it. It was just great stuff. And they were all great kids. And everybody wants to be a gunfighter. And every one of them proved it that day, and they were just squared away. So we had a great time.
It's, attributed to Napoleon, but of course it's, amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics. Yeah.
Exactly right. So, and I learned a lot, and that helped extensively in the process. After that, I did headquarters Marine Corps time. I was trying to get back to the fleet. You're always trying to get back to the fleet, trying to get back to a reconnaissance command, but it just wasn't my... I went to school, back then was command and staff, and that makes you ready to be a battalion commander. In the process, and you learn joint operations and campaigning, and we have guys who are SAWs, SAMS guys who come and mentor you. We have big exercises in school, and we go to West Virginia, and you do a big war game, and everybody has a position. Like I was a division commander and the whole 9 yards, and you fight the fight on this war game simulation and all that stuff.
But it's a staff exercise.
Exactly.
So there's no soldiers. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just all staff X, and you have to write a campaign plan. You have to write all your op orders, all the fragos. You're going to do all that stuff that you would normally do in a process. You have PAO days, and so one day we made the decision to do the "you can't do the truth, take the truth" type thing when the PAO came, and had a great time, and they used that for a joke for about 5 years in the process. And then ended up getting back to I was headquarters Marine Corps Semper Fit program. Started that program, got about $10 million in POM program memorandum, which is funds to start a program.
It's long-term
money. And I hired a lot of gals to go to each of the bases to go bring Marine Corps units and get them up on the PT tables. And they're like some little gals up there with PT gear on. She's "Okay, ready to go," and they were laughing. And then she dug the shit out of them.
Oh yeah.
I mean, just wear them out.
Love it.
And that program kicked off, went really, really well. I had great people work for me: Pam Hodge, Kathy Figanetti. Kathy was a physical science gal. Pam Hodge ran the boxing and the wrestling programs and all that. And I had a young kid, Single Marine program. He put that whole thing together. And that was headquarters Marine Corps time. But it was great because I could stay in Quantico and not be in D.C. So that was a good piece.
So what year is this?
That's now 99.
Late 90s.
Yeah,
okay.
Late 90s, because at 2000, I go to the division. I leave headquarters Marine Corps. I go back to the fleet. And I end up becoming the division OPSO under then Colonel Bob Neller, who went on to become our commandant. And he's a great guy. He's like a 1960s football coach, flat top, big guy. But he leads you, like we do gas mask PT, and he's in it doing it. We do sandbag runs. But he's a tactician, he's an LAR guy, and we take the division and we turn the division into, sorry for that, we turn the division CP and now into the digital CP because we were all flip charts. And,
command post.
Now we're doing digital wallboards and everything with all the new digital systems, and this is just the very front end of this and all that. And we have a great time, and the division really kicks into that, and we're going. And then I do a year of that and run the TEEP and training program for the division, and we send guys out, and we got a great staff from the G3. And again, I bump into the whole drug thing. We got a young sergeant who's squared away, but that's when Molly starts coming onto the scene with all these kids. And we had this great kid who's squared away, and he gets busted for Molly. So Nella talks to him and says, hey, you're about to lose everything. You're a sergeant, you're about to become a private. Tell me why. And he said, hey, sir, as much as I know I made a huge mistake, it's like, think about the best day of your life. You have sex with your wife that morning, you get promoted, you get an award, and you get a baby. He said, that whole feeling, that euphoria of all that put together is how you feel when you're on Molly. And he said, and it's just, it was a bad thing. It was what it was. And but we lost a good kid to this.
This was on the staff.
On the staff, yeah. So he was done, and it was terrible because he was a great kid in the process. But that was then a thing now with the Marine Corps, and as we saw in the Braley civilian community, it became a huge thing. And we had a whole problem with school kids doing more drugs and sucking antifreeze out of your system for your AC unit at your house. We saw a lot of that going on in the process. By this time, I'm a lieutenant colonel. Been around the block a lot, and doing the division level staff. Then I get shifted down to 8th Marines, and this is now right before 9/11.
Yep.
And I take over as XO of 8th Marines, and we're getting them ready to go. Then Colonel Robin Masterson is now the commander, great guy, and we've got 3 great battalion commanders, and we have Mogwai Knight, which is the commander, and his staff, and his key commanders, and he gives them his philosophy and how we're going to do business. Stevie Davis, Lou Rochelle, God, the third guy's a great guy. No, I just went blank, but just 3 great battalion commanders, and Master Robeson, and we spend 3 nights in the field, and every night we're going to have dinner somewhere else on the base, because every day we're doing something like shooting or something that's military, and then he's giving his guidance and leadership of this is what I expect, this is what this is double running of the O course, this is doing CQB, these are things that we're doing with the battalion commander, so the battalion commander knows what the standard is based upon what Maston wants as the battalion commander, or now regimental commander. And I get to participate in all of this, and then at night we have a formal dinner in a tent, GP, and we talk leadership and go through the whole process, and it's a great way to instill your commander's intent, your leadership style on your commanders. And then 9/11 hits, and we, since 8th Marines was Beirut, 1-8, we then become the 4th MEB in a terrorism brigade, and we take, we thought it was going to be 1-8, but it ended up being 3-8 with Stevie Davis, and we take in we convert 8th Marines headquarters in 1-8, add FAST, add MSSG, add CBURN, which is a chemical biological unit, Colonel Hams, and we make the MEB. And now we start deploying guys to Afghanistan and all that. And by this time, I'm now the Assistant Chief of Staff G3 for the MEB. And I've got Colonel Keith Wilkes, who was the Chief of Staff for the MEF. He comes down and he becomes the chief. We have a 2-star who was reserve officer who comes in. God, I forget his name. But he was good. I mean, he was well connected in the reserve community. But came in and he was the the boss, but Maston was the active service guy who was there, and we start putting guys over Afghanistan and all that, and doing that type of thing. And then the Secretary of Defense writes his snowflake white letter and tells General Brown, then Joe Holland, for SOCOM, I want to start up what's called the CTCSG, Counterterrorism Campaign Support Group, to figure out how we write the design for the war on terrorism, which was currently then going to be called Complan 7500. But it was more than just a plan. It was how do we reconfigure special operations to do this global fight, because we have not done a global war since World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And Rumsfeld wanted then Holland, who switched to General Brown, to be a 5-star type of guy. But remember, he's only a functional combatant commander.
Right.
But all the other silverbacks, which is all the regional geographic combatant commander COCOMs, PEGCOM, AFRICOM, SETCOM, etc., they're like, hey, wait a minute. My chain of command goes from me to the secretary.
Right.
I don't want some other guy telling me what to do in my AOR. He provides me force structure. I use them to execute operations.
Yeah, force provider.
Yep.
Try, man, equip, send them.
And that was what SOCOM was. But now we're a warfighter. So, and I went to JSOC. So JSOC stood it up. I went to work for them. I worked for Del Daly, who really were working for General Bargewell, who was a MACV-SOG guy in Vietnam, and he was a great guy. And my immediate boss is a guy named Dave Shores, SF guy, was JTF Haiti, Green Beret, photographic memory, smart guy, and he has a blackjack Menendez SEAL who is his deputy, and we start getting some colonels in who help, and we have 48 guys and gals who are across the spectrum of soft, Delta, SEAL teams, the whole 9 yards, all the TSOCs, service representative. I was a service rep for the Marine Corps with a ground guy for me and an air guy for me, and we had that from each service, and then we came together and we had an intel section, and then we did campaign design, and that's where even though I went to the War Commander Staff College, never went to the War College, I learned what true planning and campaigning was in strategic design from Dave Shore. Smartest guy. He had a library in his house bigger than most small city libraries. I mean, his dining room was a library. No table, just rows upon rows of books, and he knew them all. And at one point in time, he said, hey, who's read this book? And I forget the name of it. And Mike McDaniels, who was a nuclear aviation guy who dropped nuke bomb stuff, he said, I had. I said, yeah, I had. And he said, okay, go to page 24. There's a paragraph that says this. I want you to now write a paper to go to Condoleezza Rice, which talks about counterinsurgency and the utilization of power and blah, blah, blah. And 2 days later, that was on her desk. And that was the atmosphere. We worked from 06 in the morning, PT, on your own, do your thing. And we got SEAL team guys and Delta guys and all yards. And I met great buddies I had a relationship with. We do our normal free fall stuff when we had opportunities, and then each one of us got an AOR or 3 terrorist groups, and we'd have to then do design on who they are, what their focus is, why are they against the United States, etc., etc., etc.
The full workup.
All the full workup on every one of them, and give most likely, most dangerous. We had presidential advisors coming in. We had state guys. We had CIA ambassadors. We had ambassadors. We had an ambassador who was with us on the staff. We had a whole interagency guys with us, and then we started writing, designing what was then the utilization of SOF, global war. The whole conversation of how do we use the pros from Dover to conduct these operations. How do we use TSOCs? What are we going to do? We had a plan called the Mafia Plan. It was, okay, go in and kill everyone, because it was all about imams and men. And it was initially 2+7, which was Osama bin Laden, Zawahiri, and his lieutenants. Then it went to AQN, Al-Qaeda Network, and then it went to Al-Qaeda Associates and Affiliates, AQAA. So it went from this big to global.
Yeah, with the TNT, the Transnational Terrorist Organization.
Yep. And so we put what was then became 7500. Dave Shore, who's now Diane Shore, he retired and became a she. She is still a great person and works in Arlington designing ships, about to retire again. Mike Zarfelli picked up. He's a Night Stalker, another great colonel. Droopy Clark, who went on to become a 2-star in the commander of MARSOC, Marine Special Operations Command. Cliff Bray, who was part of the Desert Order operation, he flew KC-135s, refuelers, and we wrote the plan, which then became the global campaign plan against VEOs, Al-Qaeda and its affiliates.
Violent extremist organizations.
Violent extremist organizations, yep. And just that conversation. Are we fighting terrorists? Are we fighting insurgents? Are we fighting extremist organizations? I mean, the vernacular.
The answer is yes.
Yes. But because there's money involved in congressional conversation and that's where Rumsfeld said, okay, it's going to be VEO versus terrorists or versus insurgents, because we're not fighting an insurgency, because that's nation states versus we're fighting a global war.
How long from the directive to start putting this all together to how long was it from when you got the word to this is what we're going to do, we're going to start putting this all together, to the point where that whole element was functional and pumping out information that was immediately useful?
We received the Snowflake May 22nd,
2002.
2002. Everybody was there within less than a week. And then it took us about less than 10 days to get everybody kind of
spun up
in a house, because we were all geographic bachelors now. We were all living here at Fort Bragg from wherever we came from. We were lucky, my team, because we could drive every third week home, but we were gone still. And then it started. So we were doing analysis like giddy up and go, daddy, nonstop, 24/7, and we'd work during the day, and then we'd finish around 5:36. Then you'd have to brief out your bad guy. This is who they are. This is why. This is their vulnerability. This is what we have to go against. This is his network, etc. And you briefed the whole crew, plus normally some 2-stars and some presidential advisor or Secretary of Defense representative who was sitting in that day.
Some people you might not know.
No, you had no idea who they were, but you knew they were important because they were sitting right up front and they'd ask you questions. And we had lots of running jokes. And you've seen the cartoon of the guy with that picture of the guy with the coffee cup.
Oh, yeah.
It says, shut the heck up.
Kind of like World War II era.
And so you'd always have that in the back slide. And so you got sometimes you got some stupid questions. You'd flap that one up. But you pitched your analysis. You had Intel guys with us, CA guys, PSYOP guys, whole 9 yards, and you this was part of the analysis.
So from the organization of the element to actual functioning
less
was
than 10 days.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That is rapid.
Yes.
And these decisions that are getting made in these briefings are turning into orders immediately, and that's how we're driving operations. So con plans, etc.
It's going to the SecDef. He's briefing Condoleezza Rice. We're going to the SecDef. We're doing numerous con ops concepts about what we should do, and then simultaneously we're changing the dynamic of what SOCOM is, how SOCOM works, how its architecture is, what's the relationship of COCOMs to TSOCs to all this. So we're making SOCOM a 4-star warfighter, which previously it was not. In that whole transformation, we have the CSG, Campaign Support Group, the Intel Support Group, and the Ops Support Group. We start bringing in special activities, J3X, all that stuff, and we're building this architecture. We're literally building Connex block, or what do you call them, those mods on the airport on MacDill, and we have what we call now the Koresh compound, where we go to work every day. It's an enclosed fence and all these modules, and we're briefing and doing all that stuff. And then the secretary says, hey, I need a time-sensitive planning, crisis action planning capability, within 24 hours to be able to execute a target, a terrorist guy around the world who's associated with 2+7. So, and we didn't have it. We have crisis action planning, but not something like 24 hours.
Yeah.
So Colonel Shores turns to me and Ben Chapman and says, hey, Mike, you guys have this thing called R2P2, right? Yeah, rapid response planning process. 24 hours, you have to be sending reconnaissance out off the ship, whatever. He said, can you tweak that? I said, yep, we got it. So Ben and I and Spider Webb, who was astronaut trained guy, that great guy, aviation tech out of Cherry Point, we go in a room for 24 hours and we take R2P2 and tweak it and turn it into now a global rapid response planning process, TSP, time sensitive planning. Mm-hmm. And my responsibility as the senior Marine is to call the commandant and when we start doing this, and then coordinate, okay, what's the Marine Corps doing, where are we, this is what we're going to need, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to do that 2 times for real, as then we use whatever force we're going to use, the premier guys or somebody else, to go after a guy or a few guys in whatever country.
There's no MARSOC yet.
Nope, no MARSOC. In 2003,
Marine Special Operations Command.
Yeah, in 2003, we do an analysis and say, okay, based upon the bad guys, there is not enough SOF on the book to do the job. Marine Corps has to get into the fight.
Yep.
Right? Marine Corps has to join. The commandant at the time is General Jones, recon guy, etc. And he had always thought we should do it. Marine Corps had anathema to being elite. We consider ourselves elite, all of us.
By definition.
Yes. So my roommate is Jeff Brady. He's our lawyer. He's was an enlisted gunfighter, shooter guy, and he knows Spider Allen, who's the ACMAC. And so General Danny Halick says to Jeff, he said, hey Jeff, you're going up to Camp Lejeune for a dining in or something. Spider's going to be there. Let's pitch him so that we can pitch the commandant. So they do a napkin put together. Jeff comes up, gets Spider Allen into the bar, says, okay, sir, this is what General Halick wants, General Brown wants. We want to do this, this, and this. Marine Corps Hayes needs to get on board. This is what we think is going to happen. This is what we're going to need you guys to be able to do. We need you to get the commandant to take this brief. Spider says, I like it. Let's do this. So that gets us going. That's 2003. And then M.A. Singleton, who's a kid who's in the Beirut bombing, M.A. just finishes the War College, and the 2MEF commander back then, General Keyes, big guy, he tells M.A., because M.A. had been with the Rangers and knew SOF, so he says, hey, you're going to go to USASOC, you're going to be our guy. Our camo was nose on the tent with General Brown, and figure out what does he want from the Marine Corps. So this is all going back and forth, and MA is then feeding this back to the commandant and through General Neller, who's then he's the G3 at 2nd Division, and MA goes down and briefs the commandant and SOCOM and all down at Tampa, and they come up with this piece, and MA says, hey, we need to bring a MAGTAF, soft MAGTAF, to MARSOC, what becomes MARSOC, and simultaneously they were working this DET 1 with NSW, Naval Special Warfare, in the process. MA's pitch goes, he gets off the plane and then goes back, and the Assistant Commandant of Marine Corps for Air says, that guy has been sucking too much soft water. We'll never give up air, so we can give all the ground stuff and all that integrated, but we'll never give a piece of the size of air in it, because that's what Brown wanted. We needed more helicopters, more airframe stuff, but that never caught on. And MA took a hit for that one in the process, but great guy. And then they tried DET 1, go through that. They take all the architecture from what is now the Marine Corps Anti-Terrorism Brigade, and then that becomes the architecture for the structure for the MARSOC staff. General Lefebvre comes in as boss. He had JSOC time and all that. General Maston Roberson came in. He was boss. Droopy Clark was boss. I mean, these are all the people I grew up with in Southern Marine Corps, now the bosses of the generals, of MARSOC. Mm-hmm. And I'm down in Tampa and putting together, as we continue in this war on terrorism stuff. And then simultaneously, Mr. Wolfowitz, who's the assistant secretary, says, okay, we got Al-Qaeda, we're working on one. I want to go after Hezbollah. And so since I had been in Beirut and all that, I get to run that program, and I put together that construct.
And this is when? What time frame?
This is now 2005-06 time period, just before Hezbollah and all that goes off. with Israel again in 2006, 2007.
But you're separated.
No, yeah, I finally retire. My time as lieutenant colonel there, I don't get picked up for colonel. So I said, okay, I was going to move my family down if I got my last, but I didn't get selected. I said, I'm still good. Just give me my last tour of duty here. They said, no, you got to go to Okinawa. I said, no, I'm not going to do that.
No thanks.
My boss says, Mike, resign. I'll write you a position here. You'll just get out of uniform, put on a suit, and be a GS guy. So,
was that kind of, I mean, especially given everything that you've gone through in your career, but then also ramping up everything. I mean, basically starting something from nothing to fight the new war. Was that kind of disappointing for you, knowing that you weren't getting picked up?
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, I didn't get picked up for major my first time, and you become tainted because all the people who are beside you, like your great friends today, but wait a minute, you've got the disease.
That hasn't changed.
Yeah. You're non-selected. You've been passed. So you find out who your true friends are. Joe Malofsky was a great friend.
There's obviously something wrong with you if you get passed.
And so I didn't get selected for colonel. So I was, okay, I wasn't going to go to Okinawa. The war hasn't. We're kicking into it, but it's like, okay, what's going to happen next?
Iraq is popping off right now.
Yeah. Just before Iraq, and if there's a book out there which is about the CTJTF, I think it's called Global Strike. In that book is the only place you'll read where General Brown and Dave Shore went and told the secretary, do not do Iraq, because you're taking the focus off of the global war on terrorism. And there's nowhere else where you'll read about that. And those two guys stood up in front of the secretary and said, don't do this. And they were smart. And if we had done that, we probably would have not been in the place we were with Iraq in the process. But I retire and literally just call the Marine Corps, say, hey, I'm going to retire. I get out of the Marine Corps in less than 2 weeks. Now, how long does it take you get out of the Army?
It depends. For a while, they had. It depends on what you're doing. If you're actually retiring, or if you're getting med boarded. I mean, at one point, they had the med board process down to less than 100 days, which was incredible considering that it had been years.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but I mean, for retirement, it can really go as fast or as slow as you want it to.
Yeah.
Well, you can see it a lot of times now, it's 6 months to a year. People say, I'm going to retire, and they take a year to get out in the process. I said, I'm going to retire, and I retired in less than 2 weeks. And I literally had to call my boss, Colonel Roberson, and my current boss, General Halleck, who was Chief of Staff of SOCOM, both Marines. My boss at 8th Marines, now 4th MEB, said, yep, Mike, great job. You're going the right place. I approve your retirement. General said, yep, great job. He's the guy we want. I approve his retirement. And I changed my orders, and I did my last move to Tampa. Moved my family. I'd been living geographically separated, so we finally moved my family down to Tampa, became a GS civilian, and then went from there.
Yeah, and continued doing what you were already doing, which is awesome and fascinating in and of itself. And we definitely want to get to that in the future. But for right now, we're going to stick with just your time in uniform.
Yeah. Now, my retirement piece, I didn't do a retirement ceremony. I didn't do anything. And when I came off of being gone to move your family, I came back to the command in Tampa. And Droopy Clark, who's now a colonel, he retired as a 2-star. He became Marshal Commander. He actually gives me a retirement ceremony, kind of very informal, and he said, now Mike never made corporal. The day I was supposed to be corporal, they made me a candidate at OCS, and a candidate's a sergeant's rank versus pay versus a corporal, and I wanted to be a corporal. Being NCO of the Marine Corps was like, that's the shit. And he said, so today, he said, Mike is now an honorary corporal. I said, it only took me 24 years.
Longest wait for promotion.
It's kind of like the old adage about it. If you go to Korea, the fastest way to make sergeant in Korea is to show up as a staff sergeant.
And then I retired and did the next 19 plus years. So.
I'm sure that, I mean, because you already knew before you retired that you were going to keep doing what you were already doing. You just, be able to grow a beard.
Yeah.
So that probably helped the transition process. And you were still going to be working with people in uniform and, in all different branches of the government and all the 3-letter agencies and stuff like that. What do you think was the biggest change that you noticed immediately now that you weren't wearing the uniform anymore? I mean, your job was still the same. You were still working with the same people with the same mission and same goal in mind. But now you're not in uniform anymore.
Yeah. Now I'm a GS guy, and back then, because we were still on a war footing, even us GS people, and we went to NSPS for a time period, you were on in at 06, and then you were working till like 10 o'clock at night, and I was lucky I had overtime, which you normally don't get, and all that stuff. But it was the fact that I'm not in charge, even though I was a head of what was the CENTCOM SOCCENT branch.
Yeah.
And I had the whole CENTCOM SOCCENT portfolio. There's a colonel in charge, or a major. I'm a GS civilian, but luckily I had great civilians and active service guys who worked for me, who understood what my responsibility was, and even though they were service uniform guys and I was a civilian, they treated me with great respect, and I appreciate that. But the one thing I screwed up on is my VA benefits, because I was still a stud. I mean, I'm running and jumping and doing all the whole 9 yards, and someone said, "Hey, get your VA benefits done," and I said, "No, I don't need benefits." I said, "I'm healthy." Little did I know how beat up I was. And I went almost 16 years without getting my VA done. And then I got some of it done there. And by the time I got up to here, I had, I think, 70%. And if I had done that right, I would have been a lot better physically and mentally. Because in the time periods after, in the different stories as a civilian, wife got hooked on drugs, dealt with that. I had major depression, almost killed myself twice, just by dealing with all these things, still working, still deploying, still as a GS civilian doing that overseas on 1 yards, and trying to handle a very bad home healthcare situation for the wife and all that stuff.
Okay, well, we're going to stop you there because that's the teaser for part 2.
But we do want to bring you on to talk about mental health too, because that's something that's very near and dear to Dan and myself.
Yeah, I talk a lot about it. You see my post.
Yep.
I call it the Depression Ambush Kill Zone, the DAC, and you find yourself in it, and it's just like in combat. You're caught in an ambush, and we, as your battle buddy, have to get you out. And that means we have to take the chance to go into it, grab you, and pull you out for an hour, for a day, or whatever. And so we are the QRF, we're your CAS, your SIF, your fires. So if you're in it, call your battle buddy. And I tell everybody there's a thing called the Spartan Pledge out there, which is don't do anything to yourself until you call your battle buddy, because your mission is to take care of yourself and your family. Words that affect by 82nd guy. And that's my story to everybody all the time. And I talk to young kids who are going through a lot of problems, and I said, look, I'm a prime example of, it could be old dogs, young studs, doesn't matter. It can affect anybody, family problems, health problems, mental problems, whatever it is, war, combat, PTS, it doesn't matter. We all can get caught in it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we really appreciate you coming and sitting down with us. And I don't know if you're going to come back to do part 2 for the mental health stuff, or if we're going to come to you wherever you are. But I mean, that's future Dan and Roger's problem.
Yep.
But before we sign off and let you go, I do want to ask you 2 questions. One, because you go by M2, obviously Mike McCusker, right? 2 M's, M2.
No.
No. That's not it.
No.
I figured it was. Okay, well then, yeah. So where does it come from then?
So we were in the process of briefing some senior representatives in our group, Mike Patton, Mike McDaniels, myself. There were 5 of us, 5 mics. And as we're getting ready to brief, my boss is saying, okay, Mike McDaniels, I'll introduce you this way. Mike McDaniels, oh, screw it. M1, M2, M3. the senior person came out and heard it and said, M2, Mod Deuce, 50 cal.
There you go.
Badass name. That's how I got that.
All right. Well, that was totally not where I thought that was going, but I like that even better.
Yeah.
All right. So then, second question: if you could go back, would you do it all again?
In a heartbeat. I loved every minute of it. I mean, from private to lieutenant colonel, I tell young Marines, this is the best life there ever is. I said, read, study. It's all about up to you. And if I could go back right now and get back in active service, I'd do it right now. And I could probably kick some ass too, because I'm still fighting in judo and the whole line. So
I wouldn't cross you. Nope.
It's a great life. You get to learn. All in the government, you get to learn a lot. You put yourself through a lot of hardship. You learn about who you are. You learn about leadership. You learn about family, extended family, kinship, etc. And then you can go as far as hard as you want to go. I mean, private to lieutenant colonel, briefing president, briefing secretary of defense, the whole nine yards, doing the things I got to do, which not a lot of people have ever done. I mean, SA, WMD, the whole nine yards. All the special mission units. I mean, I've met the best Americans there ever are, and I love it. I loved every minute of it.
It's awesome. Well, thanks, Mike. We really appreciate you being here and sitting down with us, and we can't wait for part 2.
Yes, sir. And as our first our first Marine guest, we would be remiss if we didn't leave you with a little something special. So, in honor of being our first Marine guest.
Oh, yes. I got lunch. Very good.
So, that's just for the ride home. If you take a little snack.
I won't get hungry on the ride home, so that's good.
Perfect.
There you go.
Outstanding, guys.
Hey, sir. Thanks so much.
Well,
Thanks.
Great
We
time.
appreciate
Thank you very much for doing this. What you have is a great platform. It's really important for the young guys who are thinking about this as a lifestyle. It's a profession. It's not just a one and done. Some people don't like it, but it's a profession. If it takes to you, stick with it, and you're providing good visibility to people what's it all about, and that's a great thing. So
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
guys.
you.
Hoo-hoo.
Wow, that was a really good interview. It's certainly our longest one to date. What do you think?
That was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Obviously, you and I had some knowledge about, the conflict in Lebanon beforehand, but even he said it, that it's kind of like a black eye on the Marine Corps, and so they don't really like to talk about it. It's like he said, like a paragraph in the Marine Corps history book,
yeah.
which is kind of crazy to me. I mean, I kind of understand, but still, it's pretty wild. Especially, you're there for 6-7 months, what have you. You leave feeling like you've accomplished something, and then just a couple of months later, nearly 300 Marines and French soldiers are killed, and that entire feeling evaporates. And then
what was it all for?
Yeah, the what was it all for? But then also to see the military response that wasn't
right. And I mean, ultimately, we completely removed ourselves.
Yeah.
Which again is a strategic level decision made by ultimately the president, but
obviously not made by the people on the ground.
Yeah.
But still, I think it's good to hear those stories from him, regardless of how tough it may be.
Yeah.
Because people need to remember that these things happened, and 280, right, in the barracks.
A little less than 300.
Not to forget the embassy that was bombed months beforehand, and that was another few dozen people.
Right.
Both staff and civilian personnel. I mean, it's how many people really know about this stuff?
Yeah.
Or really even think about it?
I mean, unless you intentionally dig into the history, most of this has been removed from the public consciousness.
Right. Yeah. Well, we can go one way or the other with that, but still, he had an interesting range of service.
Yeah.
Coming in, starting his ROTC at Norwich there in the late 70s, and then active service in in the 80s all the way through the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So he had a wide range of service. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Multi-generation Marine.
Yep. Going all the way back to his folks coming right off the boat and getting handed their uniform.
Yeah. Which was common in those days. So, and then Desert Storm being part of the precursor to what would become MARSOC, and MARSOC would not exist for over a decade at this point, but being part of that, I mean, I guess you would call it a penetration force, being alone and unafraid, or the tip of the spear, as it were, and going into that area, digging in, pushing, digging in, pushing.
I remember very early on in my career doing the, low crawling and every 6 inches probing for mines as part of training. Very early on in my career. I cannot imagine doing that in the middle of the night in a desert in a mop suit.
Yeah.
I mean, and under combat conditions, of course.
Well,
but
right.
I mean, that's taking it to a whole nother level. That's wild. I mean, and he didn't even talk about how deep that minefield was. I mean, it was. I mean, obviously, it was all along the border.
Yeah.
But the depth of it itself. I mean, how long and how far are you probing every 6 inches?
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
Well, particularly, I mean, if it's part of an obstacle belt, then most likely it's part of an engagement area, which means, he mentioned it. That means there's overlapping and integrated fires.
Yep.
So you're having to deal with that. In and of itself is a terrible position to find yourself, but then just doing it under fire is not a good time.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean that's wild, but still he had an incredible array of experiences and positions, job title. I mean, and he was only complimentary of pretty much every single boss he ever had, even if they were just a short-term boss. And I mean, how rare is that?
Yeah. Man. And then jumping into the forward through the 90s into the 9/11, and then being part of the team that helped write the strategic documents that would really kind of drive our global war on terrorism, ultimately the documents that would drive the operations for that for well over a decade.
Yeah. And how quickly they got spun up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're going to start this thing. All right, now we're pumping out information.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be the fastest that a government organization has ever functioned.
Well, I mean, it's all about that.
Ever.
Yeah, you have to have that. The motivation needs to be in place, which it was after 9/11.
Yes, it was after 9/11, so, yeah.
Yeah. M2, he has a lot more that was left on the table for this pretty considerable in length interview. So we're going to have him back to talk about some of his initiatives and some of his post-military career position as a GS, and then later as a contractor, and doing
still working with the military, still doing service. But yes, he still has there's a lot of things that we didn't get to, and that's okay. We knew that going in, and we're gonna save that for.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I really wanted to ask him that I didn't get a chance to was he a first time go on JMPI when he went through Static Line Jump Master School? Because he's a Winter Ranger. Yeah. First time go JMPI. Time will tell.
Yeah. Because of everything that we discussed, that definitely was the one question that got away.
I was not a first time go, by the way, so not throwing stones. Okay. Do you have anything else?
No, that was great, and I'm definitely looking forward to part 2. I really am. But I know that's we're a few months away from that. So
yeah. Okay. Free fire area. It's been a long time since we did one of these.
It has since April. So several months.
We asked the tough questions here.
We do.
So
we do.
And by tough questions, I mean utterly unrelated to our interview and superfluous, which is a good SAT word. Mm-hmm. Daniel.
I am.
What is the one and only King best flavor of ice cream? You're allowed one topping if the topping supplements it to the point where it raises itself above others.
Ooh, that's tricky. I don't.
Ice cream.
I enjoy ice cream, but it's not something that I love, have to have kind of thing.
So you were not a first time go.
I do like pralines and cream. I really do. I really do. And butter pecan. Butter pecan with caramel. Like melted caramel on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm going with. Butter pecan with not like an entire syrup bottle of it, but a nice drizzle of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I'm going with.
That
if you say mint chocolate chip,
I'm not. Well, I haven't been asked anything to this point. To respond to your answer, do you want a copy of the Saturday Evening Post and some Werther's Originals to go with your grandfather ice cream? A copy of the paper?
I didn't realize that made it a grandfather ice cream.
Okay. Is it my turn?
Sure. What is the king of all? What is the king of all ice creams?
My beloved wife completely and utterly makes fun of me for this because my favorite.
Beware of revealing this to me. This could have consequences.
My favorite flavor of ice cream, if I could pick one, is it has to be quality. It can't be just cheap, sugary, artificial flavor. It has to be 100% natural vanilla ice cream with a fresh fruit topping on it. Take your pick.
There's absolutely
strawberries, blueberries, whatever. But
there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Probably peaches might be my number one. So fresh.
Oh, peaches and cream is good too.
So fresh vanilla ice cream with fresh peaches on it is chef's kiss.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that decision.
Okay.
But I will say,
she thinks it's boring.
When it comes to ice cream, I can't really think of too many choices that would be wrong. Except if you ever find a cake or a birthday cake ice cream, don't do it. It is a tub of diabetes.
Diabetes.
I'm telling you.
Wilford Brimley does not approve, is that what you're telling me?
I'm telling you, that is the only ice cream where I ever took a bite and said, this is just too much.
It's too much.
One bite, it was game over. It was in the back of the freezer, I think up until the point where I moved out like 2 years later.
But you didn't have the heart to throw it out, though.
No, that's wasteful.
You weren't that much of a party pooper then.
No, I mean, maybe someone's unlucky child would come over and I could just give it off to them.
Was it one of my unlucky children?
No.
Okay.
This is this was when I was a drill, so Morgan wasn't even born yet. Yeah. Wow.
She probably still would have found a way to get her hands on that ice cream. Been doing the space-time continuum. On that note. Okay. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. If you're still watching at this point, then we know you're a fan, so we appreciate your support. You can find us on all the social media, so Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Those are the big ones. We do have a Twitter X presence, so please give us a follow there. Check out our website, tracerburnout.com. We keep as much of our stuff that we got going on the website as well. And we have our partners down at the bottom if you want to look into them. Also, we do have a merch shop, so if you want to find ways to support the show, this is a completely self-funded operation. So
get yourself a cool shirt.
So you can get a really cool shirt like this, but we do have our merch shop is on our website.
Yep. And as we said in the beginning before the interview, we are now on all the podcast networks.
That's right.
The big ones and most of the small ones. That's right. And we will continue to put all the episodes on YouTube and Rumble so that if you have the desire, you can actually see the faces of these veterans and pictures
and all
of
the
their
great pictures,
all the pictures of their adventures along the way. So thanks for watching/listening. We hope you enjoyed it. And remember, your service matters.